story is about an orphanage that raises its children exceptionally well. The girl you see crying is upset because her brother is about to leave with a new father who just arrived here. You might be wondering why this man doesn't fit the typical image of a parent you might have imagined. Well, it is because these kids receive special education, so it only makes sense if only special parents can take them under their wing. You might also be curious about what kind of special education these seemingly ordinary kids are getting. Well, you'll get your answer soon enough. As soon as the sister tells the kids to stop pretending and get ready for training, they pull out sharp blades and weapons, which are definitely not toys for poking around. The sister even tells the little girl not to let her snot dangle out of her nose while pretending to cry, because it looks gross, and she doesn't want the new parents to get a bad impression of the kids they've raised so dearly. The girl quickly owns up and hastily wipes her nose. We also meet the proud director of the orphanage, who takes major pride in this special education approach. He sees it as a real gift for these kids, because they've been trained as living, breathing weapons ever since they learned how to walk. These kids are raised with super strict supervision to make sure they meet the standards of the filthy rich. Because of this crazy attention to detail, it costs a fortune to train each child properly. Another question that might come up in your mind is what these kids are actually used for. Well, there is not any straightforward answer to this question, and the director just says they're like computers. And what they're used for is decided by the buyers, or as you might call them, the new parents. For example, this rich fat cat who has just adopted a new kid shows his new son a photo of a man and says, "This is your target. Memorize his face." The director then explains that since these kids are living weapons, they pose significant threat to the buyer. So the orphanage made sure to drill each and everyone with 3 absolute principles from a young age. These are the rules they can't disobey because they have been wired in their subconscious mind, and the orphanage calls these the 3 absolute principles, and they're crucial for keeping the kids under control. While this fat guy is drilling the boy about memorizing the photo, the kid, however, points out that there's a car tailing them closely. The old man is a bit startled to hear something he never asked. He stammers, explaining it's typical, demanding to know what the heck he's talking about, and tells him to just focus on memorizing the damn picture. The kid quickly snaps back to attention and swears to follow the orders. And there you go. That's what the first principle is all about. Absolute compliance to the parents' orders. That car tailing them smashes into them, and their car flips over from the impact. The kid scrambles out and sees his father badly hurt and barely clinging to life. And that is when we learn about the second principle these kids are drilled with. Never use your powers without your parents' permission. As the kid mourns his father, the attackers get out of their cars with their guns in hand. As they cautiously approach the flipped car, they spot the kid crying and begging for help, shouting that his dad isn't breathing. The attackers are taken aback to see this because they had no idea that there was a kid in the car. They decide to toss the kid aside to finish up the work, but before they can, the boy whips out a knife and stabs one of them right in the throat, making him bleed like crazy, and then quickly snatches the gun from the fallen enemy. Before the other hitman even realizes what's happening, he sees the kid aiming the gun at him and gets a solid bullet right in the head, ending him with a single shot. And that's what the third rule is all about. Forget the first 2 principles and do whatever it takes to keep your parents safe. The director, on the other hand, couldn't be prouder of his children. He is practically bursting with joy and pride for raising such perfect, exceptional kids. He quickly shows the register book containing information about each and every kid and asks his buyer which one he would prefer. But the buyer flatly refuses any of them. So, the old man puts the register book back on the drawer and reluctantly pulls out a file for a kid who's already been deemed a defective product. He's disappointed that the buyer is only interested in this particular one. Apparently, this misfit kid was a real gem. Even the director is a huge fan of his. He had the best skills out of all the weapons they'd whipped up, and the old man was practically swooning over him. But of course, the kid disappeared, and the director's left wondering if he's even still breathing. They've been on a wild goose chase to find him, but since he's parentless, he can't use his powers without someone's permission. So they're pretty much in the dark because of 0 leads, and he's probably living incognito as just another regular high school kid. Well, it seems like this supposed ultimate weapon is getting pushed around by a bunch of school bullies. After taking a punch from a guy in a white hoodie, he's down for the count, writhing in agony from that one brutal hit. Guess being a top-tier weapon doesn't always mean you can handle a schoolyard smackdown. This guy Yusef with deadpan eyes hovers over our boy, asking him how many points he'd give that punch. The poor guy fumbles out, that's a solid 180,000 points right there. The other bullies in the group high-five Yusef for racking up such a high fist score. Yusef then decides he wants to play further, planning to test his kick to see how many points he can score this time. But before he can walk to our boy Hyunho once again, a blonde dude pushes this blackhead away and rushes up to Hyunho, eager to know how many points his punch can earn. Yusef doesn't appreciate getting pushed by some lowly weirdo, and even Hyunho can tell Yusef is pissed about the blonde's shove. So Yusef silently strolls over to the riled-up blondie, Cyan. When he gets there, he gives Cyan a good old slap across the face, casually saying, "Just paying you back, buddy." No hard feelings. As much as Cyan hates the humiliation of that slap, he swallows his pride and gives a thumbs up to his friend for a solid 180,000-point slap. The guy with the deadpan eyes just smiles and casually walks away, telling Cyan he can buy him a pack of cigarettes instead of flattery. Before Yusef goes, Sion challenges him, promising to fight him next time. Meanwhile, the protagonist is totally fed up with all this nonsense from these ragtag idiots because he knows he could take them all down in one fell swoop. Still, he plays the role of the dumb weakling, and Sion starts choking him, demanding to know if Yusef's punch is actually better than his. Cyan keeps on bullying our boy, treating him like his personal punching bag to vent his frustration, and tells Hyunho to tag along with him for a little while. With no way out, the boy reluctantly follows the rowdy thug and ends up footing the bill for their meal, because, well, Cyan claims he's broke, saying he's all out of cash after running errands for Yusef. Blondie then wonders aloud who would win if he fought Yusef head-on. In response, Hyunho states that he can't say anything for sure. Out of nowhere, Cyan notices the snack shop has the same name as Hyunho, and our guy sheepishly admits it's run by his mom. Right on cue, his mother also shows up and says if Cyan is her son's friend, he can eat as much as he wants. Cyan is genuinely surprised to learn that this is actually Hyunho's mother's shop, and our boy feels pretty disappointed because he had been trying to keep this a secret all along. And he's not sure why his truth had to come out at the hands of this jerk, who's shamelessly running his tongue over his lips, probably looking forward to freeload some more food. Seeing the shifty look on his filthy friend's face, Hyunho grabs his pen, ready to poke a hole in Cyan's eyes if he tries anything sneaky. Just as he's about to make his move, the blondie surprises him by apologizing for not introducing himself properly earlier. He introduces himself as Cyan Park, Hyunho's buddy, and comments that he finally gets why the shop had a weird name. Hyunho's mom chuckles at the joke and mentions that Hyunho told her to keep it under wraps. Cyan then jabs at his friend, saying he's awful at hiding things and that he's also bummed his friend kept such a stunning mom a secret. Hyunho, now totally over this guy's act, knows Cyan's just a piece of work. To avoid any more nonsense, he tells his mom they need to bounce because other friends are waiting for them. The woman packs up some food in a plastic bag and hands it to Cyan, telling him to share it with others. He explicitly and happily states that all Hyunho's friends are like her own children, so Cyan should not shy away from anything. While Hyunho tries to convince her that it's really not necessary, the blondie's eyes light up at the sight of free food. He grabs it without a second thought, completely ignoring Hyunho's internal groans. He is feeling pretty pathetic, internally begging his mom to rethink this, because he knows these guys are just a bunch of bullies, not real friends. Hyunho then pleads with Cyan not to share the food with Yusef or anyone else. Cyan agrees with a smirk and says his goodbyes. Hyunho's mom, ever the gracious host, tells Cyan to bring more friends next time, to which Cyan enthusiastically agrees, saying he'll definitely come back with a crew. Well, that's exactly what Hyunho was trying to avoid, and here we are. Once Cyan's out of sight, the boy turns to his mom and lets loose, and while fighting to keep his tears in check, he furiously demands to know why she didn't just pretend they weren't related. Seeing her son so upset, his mom is totally confused and hurt. She tells him she was just happy to meet his friend, and apologizes if she caused any trouble. Hyunho, meanwhile, is left questioning the rationality behind his words. He has no idea why he's yelling at his mom, especially when she's apologizing. He's feeling like garbage for acting out. His mom tries to explain that she just wanted him to make more friends, which is why she acted the way she did. Hyunho's hand shakes with frustration and confusion, and he's barely holding himself together. The next day at school, Hyunho sees the same tteokbokki his mom makes, sitting right before his eyes. Apparently, Yusef has figured out that Hyunho's mom runs that snack shop down the street. So, he grabbed a bowl for himself. Yusef takes a dirty rag, dips it into his bowl of tteokbokki, starts rubbing it in Hyunho's face, and complains that he found this rag in his food and demands a refund because he can't eat filth. To make matters worse, he tosses another jab, sarcastically asking if he should go directly to Hyunho's mom for the refund. Hyunho is absolutely livid with Cyan, especially after he ratted out his secret despite his pleas to keep it quiet. Trying to keep his cool, Hyunho responds coldly, asking if they're even considered friends. This gets under Yusef's skin, and he mocks Hyunho for throwing a tantrum over a little joke. Then, to add insult to injury, Yusef dumps the entire bowl of tteokbokki right onto Hyunho's uniform. That's the last straw. Hyunho's already got his pen in hand, and before Yusef can react, he doesn't hesitate to swing his hand to jab the pen straight into Yusef's throat. His hand stops just short of the mark, trembling as he fights to keep himself in check. Yusef, not exactly thrilled about being threatened, gets more cocky and pissed off, demanding to know what the hell Hyunho thinks he's doing. A few moments later, Cyan strolls into the classroom, only to find everyone dead silent. The place is a mess. Security guards are on the scene. The window has been shattered. Blood is splattered across the floor, and Hyunho's glasses are scattered on the ground. Looks like things have taken a serious turn, either an accident or, dare I say, an attempt of murder, attempted by Yusef. You see, just a moment ago, Hyunho was mercilessly beaten by this jerk, for about 15 minutes straight. He begged for mercy, draped in his own blood, and lost consciousness several times while writhing in pain. Despite his pleas, Yusef didn't stop and continued the relentless beating. When Hyunho was completely worn out and shattered from the brutal assault, he looked outside through the nearby window and finally ended it by jumping out of it. Now, we find ourselves in an abandoned building where we encounter this disgusting creature again. With no shred of empathy, he casually puffs on his cigarette and tells his friends to confess that they were the ones who accidentally pushed Hyunho out of the window while playing around. His friends are pretty reluctant to take the blame. In fact, they refuse right away to Yusef because they don't want to get into trouble. That's when Yusef brings up a useful Korean law known as the juvenile offender law. He explains that he's no longer eligible for this because he's past the age limit, so he's asking his friends to help him out by confessing that they were the ones who pushed Hyunho out of the window. He insists that this is the only way he can avoid a trip to jail. Still, the other boys are hesitant and remind him that even if they take the blame, they'll be hit with a civil lawsuit. Yusef just shrugs it off, saying he's got that covered too. He then points out that the civil lawsuit hasn't been filed yet, and if they eliminate Hyunho's only surviving family member, his mother, there will be no one left to file the lawsuit. Yusef also brings a suitcase full of hard cash, offering 10 million won per person in exchange for their help. Once everything's figured out, they decide to pay a visit that night to the grieving mother, who's still trying to cope with the loss of her son. She's sitting in her son's room, surrounded by his things, lost in her grief. As midnight strikes, the thugs quickly put on their masks and head straight for the 5th floor. But when they try to use the elevator, they find it's out of order. So they opt for the traditional staircase. As they make their way up, they discover that the elevator is jammed because someone has intentionally wedged it with a fire extinguisher, preventing it from coming back down. Before Yusef can even figure out who might have done this, they hear a familiar voice. Apparently, Sion is sitting on the staircase, already waiting for them to arrive. Yusef quickly asks what the hell he's doing there, while the other lackey is just thrilled to see him and tells him to join them. Sion gets up from his seat, ready to dive into action, but not before asking 2 important questions. First, he wants to know how they found out about Hyunho's Taeokboki place, which was a hidden gem only he knew about. Yusef casually pulls down his mask and explains that when Sion didn't bring the cigarettes he was supposed to, Yusef followed him and saw him hanging out with the neighborhood kids. That's when he spotted Hyunho arguing with his mother. Sion realizes that it was actually because of him that these thugs found out about the place. He then moves on to his second question and tells Yusef to think carefully before answering. He wants to know why they're really here. That's when Yusef flexes his big iron pipe and tells Sion they're just here to handle things with Hyunho's mother to keep her from filing a lawsuit and let her sleep peacefully. He's actually glad Sion's here too because he's been getting on his nerves lately. Yusef reminds him about the push from earlier and figures out that Sion was just pretending to bully Hyunho, and in reality, he was trying to protect him the whole time. Yusef admits he was too dense to see it sooner and was itching to take care of Sion as well. With that, Sion is done with the interrogation. He picks up the fire extinguisher and Yusef doesn't hesitate to swing his giant rod. Sion quickly pulls the pin from the extinguisher, aims it at Yusef, and starts blasting him with all the bubbly gas. As their vision blurs, one of the lackeys catches a glimpse of an extinguisher heading straight for his face. Before he knows it, the red tank smacks him right on the noggin, and the impact also sends Yusef sprawling to the ground too. Sion quickly shoves his buddy off, grabs the rod again while Sion handles the other 2 lackeys. When he sees Yusef making a move, he blocks the iron rod with the extinguisher like a pro. In a flash, he ducks down and slams the extinguisher onto Yusef's feet, smashing his toes into oblivion. Sion then boots him over the stairs, sending him tumbling backward. He then starts trolling down the stairs, while casually informing Yusef that his cuneiform bone above the metatarsal is broken, and he's pretty sure this arrogant bastard won't be walking anytime soon with those messed up legs. The filthy man groans in pain, lying defenseless on the ground, and shakily asks why Sion is doing this to him. That's when Sion drops the bombshell. He explains that there are 3 principles that were drilled into his mind as a kid. First, a parent's word is absolute. Second, don't use violence without permission. As he says this, he lands a devastating punch right on the guy's head. The other lackeys on the ground are totally lost, not understanding a word of this crazy rant. It's pretty wild that we were led to think Hyunho, the whiny kid with glasses, was the main character. Turns out, Sion is actually the missing kid from the orphanage. After losing several teeth and with a broken nose, Yusef begs for forgiveness and pleads for Sion to stop. But our boy keeps going, explaining that the third principle is, if there's a threat to the parent's safety, the kid can ignore the first two rules and handle the situation however necessary to keep the parent safe. Sayan remembers Hyunho's mother saying that all of Hyunho's friends are like her own children. So, basically, she's his mother now. And if anyone threatens his mother, he's got the green light to beat them to a pulp. With a resounding bang, Sayan smashes that filthy bastard's skull, and the sound echoes through the building. The scene cuts back to the creepy orphanage, where a sister is visiting the director. She tells him there's a call from Korea. When the man asks who it is, she says it's the Baeko personnel. The old man's mind perks up as he recognizes the caller and quickly grabs the phone. The caller quickly reports that they've found the kid they've been hunting for, the legendary figure from the Dead Mansion project, codenamed Sean. Apparently, he's in Korea right now. And there you have it, the official introduction of our boy. The Orphanage, which is known as Dead Mansion, is a highly funded multinational organization that produces weapons for the rich. In the eyes of the Orphanage, he was the perfect child, and his code name is Sean Park Sion. They had us fooled in the first half, not gonna lie. I really thought the black-haired guy was the real MC. Here's the scoop on our boy's backstory. Sean was one of the children created by the Dead Mansion project. He was the pinnacle of their product they had produced so far. He was top-notch in infiltration, weapon skills, and VIP assassination. He was meant to be supplied to a top client of the Orphanage, a notorious Yakuza organization in Japan. But there was a mix-up, and instead of Japan, he ended up in Korea. The director explains that it's been 5 years since that mishap, and he had almost thought Sean was dead, so they gave up on him. But now, this guy, who looks more like a filthy rich mafia boss than a father, is thrilled they've found him. He quickly tells the sister to bring Sean back as soon as possible, by any means necessary, because he can't wait any longer. The woman, whom we've been calling Sister, lets down her black veil, revealing her dead eyes. She quickly adheres to the order, saying she will proceed with the retrieval operation immediately, and this lady in question goes by the name Rachel. As soon as she drops her act as Sister, my God, this woman looks absolutely creepy. Dressed in a tight black shiny suit, she's not holding back a single bit in flexing her big guns. She makes it clear that she will drag Sion back even if she has to take him out by force. This woman is the Dead Mansion instructor, and her specialty is still unknown. However, the director quickly tells her to simmer down because he needs Sion unharmed, and she doesn't need those guns either. The lady quickly gets embarrassed and starts picking up her robe to put it back on, muttering about how she was just getting into character. In the next scene, we see Kwon Byung-woo, Yusef's father, bowing his head to apologize to Hyunho's mother. He promises to cover all medical expenses, mental damages, and any other compensation she might need. But the woman flat out states that nothing will change with just an apology because this isn't something that can be resolved with words alone. The students nearby are startled to see this filthy rich man bowing his head like this. And Kwon Byung-woo finally lifts his head, turns around with a blank face, saying he will be taking his leave. The woman is utterly baffled by his strange behavior. In response, Kwon Byung-woo covers his face with a handkerchief and reveals that he was here to make amends. But since they can't resolve anything through discussion, he will leave because efficiency is key in all matters. He then walks forward towards his luxurious Maybach, telling the woman that he also knows other ways to sort out this mess because he's quite the expert in these matters. With those parting words, his car zooms off. He then complains to his manager about how disgustingly stingy and smelly that place was, insisting they tear it all down and build a mixed-use complex instead. The rich man then asks about Sion, or we can also call him Sean, and asks his manager if they have taken care of that kid. The manager lets him know their people are already en route and the secretary will ring them once the job's done. Kwon Byung-woo just nods and heads to Sanlim University Seongsim Hospital. Inside, we find Yusef all banged up, wrapped in bandages like a mummy. He tells his dad the kid who messed him up was no average Joe. He kept rambling about some 3 engraved principles or something. His dad raises an eyebrow, asking if this is the new trend among kids. Yusef just shakes his head, saying he hasn't a clue. Before Yusef can spill more, his dad cuts him off and gives a cold stare to the women and humbly requests the nurse to give them some alone time. Once the lady is out of the way, he slaps his son hard right over his face, just like any typical father. After slapping Yusef's face, Byung-woo lets him have it. What's really grinding his gears isn't just that his son picked a fight, bullied some kids, and caused them to jump out of a window. Nah, what's really bothering him is that Yusef didn't clean up the mess afterward, leaving a trail of evidence behind. He drills into Yusef that the basics of the job are to avoid doing things twice, meaning don't screw up and leave evidence for others to find. Byung-woo tells him to watch his father closely and learn from this chance to fix things. Meanwhile, Sean is taking a beating from a group of goons sent by Byung-woo. The leader, decked out in gloves, watches as his lackeys drag the injured boy from the ground. With a scowl, he delivers a series of stinging slaps to Sean's face, not stopping until the boy collapses from sheer exhaustion. The glasses-wearing thug, looking down at Sean with a sneer, says, "You might have taken down a few kids, but you're nothing against adults." They grab one of Sean's arms, and the burly lackey yanks it straight, holding it firm. The leader then places his foot on Sean's arm and applies all his weight, leaving the poor kid writhing in agony. Before they leave, they make sure Sean knows this is payback for the humiliation and beating he dealt to their young master, Yusef. They're leaving him alive just so he can stew over his mistakes. As dusk settles in, Sean sits there, snapping his shoulder back with a sneer. He chuckles at how the goons couldn't even tell the difference between a dislocated and a broken arm, despite their big talk about being adults. The beating he received? Well, it was nothing compared to the thrashings Aunt Rachel used to dish out. Sean's frustrated that he can't tap into his full strength without orders, but he's relieved knowing Yusef won't be bullying anyone else. As he heads out, grumbling to himself, he runs into Hyunho's mother. She recognizes him immediately and asks, "What happened to you?" With a warm hello, Sean greets her and is soon invited to dinner. Hyunho's mother has prepared a feast, urging him to eat his fill. When Sean hears this command to eat, he dives into the food like a wild beast. He is driven by an instinct to comply with the care of someone he now sees as his parent. The mother then gently instructs Sean to drink some water, pointing out that it'll help him digest better. Sean follows her advice, downing the water with a hearty gulp and letting out a satisfied burp afterwards. He thanks her for the meal, and she smiles, happy to see him after such a long time. Sean's mood turns serious as he asks about Hyunho's condition. In response, she assures him that the surgery went smoothly and that Hyunho's doing fine. She's hopeful for his recovery, even though things are tough right now. Then, her strength seems to crumble. Her hand starts to shake, and tears flow freely. She sobs, feeling weak compared to her son and helpless as a mother. Her heartfelt wish spills out of her tongue. She wants to destroy everyone who hurt Hyunho, especially Yusef's father, and tear them all apart. Well, it looks like Sean has finally found a reason to unleash his powers at full force against those jerks. As the lady turns around to apologize for her sudden outburst, Sean's already long gone. The scene then shifts to Byung-woo Construction Company. Inside the building, the father of that nasty son raises a toast to celebrate the record profit they've racked up in the third quarter of this year. He's giving a heartfelt thanks to all his employees, saying it's all thanks to them that Byung-woo Construction has come this far. Among the crowd of employees, we spot one of the same hefty guys who had beaten up Sean earlier, and near to him stands a waiter who suspiciously looks like Sean. The waiter approaches the man and offers to pour him a drink. As soon as the man says, "Pour some," the waiter smashes the bottle right over this jerk's face. The bottle shatters, leaving the wine and glasses scattered through the air. The fatty stumbles back, trying to get himself together, and quickly goes for a counterattack. But Sean is ready. He shoves those bare glasses he was holding into the guy's hands like he's handing over a pair of gloves. Then, with a brutal swing of his leg, he kicks the jerk right in the face. Next, Sean grabs some forks and knives and hurls them at the guards with deadly precision. They hit their targets perfectly. It doesn't take long for everyone to catch on that something's going down. Before they can do anything, a bunch of the black-suited guys are already out, and people are screaming about a blonde kid who's causing all this mess. The mention of a blonde kid rings a bell for the company director. Meanwhile, Sean is hiding under a table, knife in hand. He zips past everyone, slicing through them like they're nothing more than cucumbers with that tiny knife of his. He's sticking to what he's been taught. A parent's words are absolute. He can't ignore the tears and pleas of the mother who wanted everyone to tear apart along with that father. So he's doing exactly what he's been told. He grabs a tablecloth and, before the ragtag crew can get close, uses it as a distraction. He throws the table right at their faces, crushing them under its weight and leaving them screaming their lungs out. Just then, a knife flies in from behind, but he ducks quickly, and the knife hits one of the black-suited guys in front instead. The one who just threw the dagger seems like the same guy with the black gloves, and he's pretty impressed with Sean's reflexes. He's also surprised to see that the arm he broke is still working. Before he can finish playing around with those gloves, Sean grabs the guy's hand and slaps him hard across the face. He expertly locks the guy's arm and snaps the bone inside, coolly telling him, "That's how you break an arm." As the cocky guy sprawls on the ground, a bullet zips past Sean's face, grazing him closely. The shooter is Byung-woo, standing on the first floor, looking disappointed for missing his shot. Sean quickly raises his hand and calls out that it's tough to hit from that distance unless you're a real pro. Byung-woo curiously asks who this kid is. He remembers that Korean kids these days are into something called crew, so he asks if Sean is part of that too. To which Sean responds that he doesn't know what the heck that crew thing means. But if Byung is asking which crew he belongs to, then he proudly states that he is with the Hyunho snack shop. The mention of Hyunho snacks rings a bell for the zombie-like dude, and promptly asks if Sean is talking about that smelly alleyway junk food place. With a sneer, the man shoves the gun barrel right between Sean's eyes and asks if the woman tipped him off to kill him. Sean smirks and says he's absolutely wrong, because all she did was tell him to tear and crush everyone. While the zombie is trying to figure out what the heck Sean is saying, my guy moves with lightning speed, knocks the gun away, and gives the guy a solid slap. That one slap was enough to scramble Byung-woo's brain, and with Sean's final punch, the dude hits the ground, and his face is a bloody mess, nose and mouth bleeding from the impact. Sean makes it clear he's not here to assist anyone, he's just following his parents' absolute commands. With that, he turns to walk away while the guy on the ground keeps ranting about how he should have taken Sean out when he had the chance, and regrets not sticking to his own motto of leaving no work unfinished. Sean grabs the gun, aims it up at the chandelier, and tells the guy to stop blabbering about pointless stuff. He fires, and the chandelier starts to fall, crashing down and crushing the man just as the mother wished for. Sean walks away, shaking his head and muttering how both the father and son are really just the same. We're back in the hospital, where the nurse asks Yusef if he's feeling any better. The arrogant guy just scoffs and asks why he'd be here if he was doing well. The nurse comments that she's heard school violence can be pretty intense these days, but she's never seen anyone as badly hurt as him before. She wonders if the kid who hit him must have been a real expert, though even for high schoolers, this is pretty extreme. As she squats down to pick up her things, we get a glimpse of her giant ass. Man, we already know that the Russians are thick as hell, but this is something next level. She then grabs the injection and asks Yusef what he was discussing with his father earlier about some 3 principles. Noticing the weird color of the injection, Yusef questions what the heck she's injecting him with. Rachel then pulls out her mask and reassures him not to worry, saying that as long as she only uses half, he won't die. It looks like she's finally here to take our guy, and she starts pressing against his chest, grilling him about those 3 absolute principles he mentioned. The guy gets genuinely scared by her death glare and tells her to just get the hell out. That's when Rachel pulls off her fake hair and stops playing games. She straightforwardly demands he reveal the name of the kid who messed him up like that. We also find out her specialties, which are disguise, infiltration, interrogation, and of course, torture. Shortly after, Rachel calls the director when she arrives at Byung-woo's company. She tells him that the boy apparently used his powers. The director is shocked by this news, and Rachel further explains that she rushed to the spot where Sean was last reported. But by the time she got there, he was already gone. The place was a mess, with people badly injured, something only Sean's powers could have caused. The director is confused, saying he has no idea what's going on, because in the history of the Dead Mansion, no one has gone against the absolute 3 principles. The old man walks over to a cupboard, and as he opens it, a deluge of books spills out. He remarks that if Sean is ignoring the absolute 3 principles, it's no ordinary matter anymore. The weapons the Dead Mansion sold off could bypass these principles and target the Dead Mansion itself. He instructs her that her mission has changed, and she must ensure that if Sean is disregarding the principles, she'll need to take action. To which Rachel quickly agrees, and the director also mentions that if she needs support in Korea, she can contact the Baeko personnel there. Just then, 2 men show up right on cue. They're pretty amazed that a single high schooler managed to take them all down. Rachel hangs up, and one of the guys, particularly the fat one, looks a bit freaked out by her appearance and wonders if kids nowadays really dress like that. His buddy explains that she's Russian and that some people are pretty open-minded, adding that even his own wife is open-minded. The next day, we're back at school, and it looks like Rachel has taken on the fake role of a teacher at the school where Sean is studying. She's here to dig deeper into what Sean's up to, and just thinking about it gets her all worked up. She's excited to see how he's grown up. Back in the day, Sean was her favorite student. He absorbed everything she taught him like a sponge. So, she's really looking forward to seeing him again. When she arrives outside the classroom, she spots Sean. He's in the middle of narrating the story of how Yusef was begging for mercy after he beat the crap out of him. Rachel is completely taken aback by his behavior, and she is having a hard time accepting if this vulgar kid really is Sean. Suddenly, a chubby kid sitting behind Sean gets really pissed off and finally wakes up because of Sean's nonstop rambling. They both start getting cocky with each other, and Rachel wonders if they've already figured out who's boss. She remembers how at Dead Mansion, they had this annual event where the kids fought to measure their combat power and determine who was on top. It was so cute when they challenged her, and Sean was always the strongest among them. But now, Sean looks like he's getting his butt handed to him by this big guy, making Rachel seriously question his status as the strongest. The chubby kid keeps kicking and thrashing Sean like he's just a sack of potatoes, and Sean just takes the beating head on. Rachel's face quickly shifts to a blank poker face, watching this once mighty kid get pummeled like a fool. After a bit of watching, Rachel starts to figure out that Sean probably didn't use his powers because he's hiding his true identity. This makes her think he might still be under the control of the 3 principles, but she's not entirely sure and wants to keep an eye on him. She can see his sharp, sophisticated eyes. The good kids from Dead Mansion should have both physical strength and brains, and Sean always stood out. Even if he's hiding his power, his smarts still shine through. As his former teacher, she's a bit troubled that he can't disguise himself properly and thinks about teaching him again when she gets the chance. While Sean is busy doodling the moment he smacked Yusuf with that fire extinguisher, Rachel gets confused. She thought he was focusing on studying with such concentration, but he's just messing around. So, she gives him a heavy book slam right on his head. In the bathroom, Rachel sits with her head spinning in confusion. She's sure Sean can't possibly be this foolish and starts to think maybe this is someone else who just looks like him. It's hard for her to accept that he might really be this clueless. She decides to change her plans. It's no longer just about the 3 principals, now she needs to figure out if this guy is really codenamed Sean. After class, Sean's head is throbbing. He remembers the teacher usually doesn't hit that hard. Meanwhile, Rachel, now dressed as a student, comes over. But then he hears a familiar voice. After turning around, he sees Hyunho's mother standing there. She's relieved to see him, especially since her bags are weighing her down, and she tells him to please carry them for her. Sean quickly proceeds to carry the bags as commanded. When they hit the snack shop, Sean devours his food like a wild animal. The mother tells him to slow down, and he quietly takes her advice. Rachel starts piecing things together. She figures out that Yusuf is the one who knocked out this woman's son, but she's still not sure about Sean's connection to them. After seeing him eat like this, she's fuming that Sean is just as vulgar as she suspected and is itching to tear this Sean imposter apart. As soon as Rachel takes a bite of her food, she gets a chill and her tongue practically hangs out. She asks for some water after just one bite of the insanely spicy dish. The woman quickly hands over the water and asks if she can't handle the heat. Rachel is stunned, wondering how these folks can torture themselves with such fiery food. She is pretty sure these Koreans are out to assassinate her with this much heat. Sean then tells her to slow down, saying she's being clumsy. That's it. Her frustration has hit the roof, and she vows to take this jerk down. Speaking of spice, she remembers Sean couldn't handle it either. If this guy is really Sean, he should be struggling with all this heat, just like he did back in Russia. She watches his trembling hand, thinking he's having a tough time. But instead, he's giving thumbs up after thumbs up to the lady, raving about how delicious the food is. The woman is happy and keeps feeding him. Rachel realizes he's actually handling all that spice like a pro. She is confused, wondering why he's chowing down on this fiery food like a fool instead of refuting to eating it. Rachel then remembers that Sean helped this woman carry bags with just her one command, and now he's eating without refusing her and helping her with everything she asks for, as if he's following her every command. Seems like she's finally pieced it together. He also would not have killed all those people so skillfully without any commands, and she's sure he was ordered to destroy the Byungwoo construction purposefully. The only person who seems likely to give such orders is the woman he's with. After connecting the dots, Rachel decides to test her theory to see if this woman is really the one commanding Sean. She pays the bill for her food, and while the mother turns to grab some spare change, Rachel sees her chance. She grabs a chopstick and throws it toward the woman. Just as she hoped, Sean leaps from his seat, intercepts the chopstick midair, and grabs the woman by her face. The stool nearby tips over as they quickly vanish. When the mother turns around, both of them are gone. When we finally see them, Rachel can't contain her excitement after realizing that it's definitely Sean. On the other hand, it does not take long for our boy to figure out who she is, telling her to drop the act and stop tailing him like that. Rachel greets him officially and asks why he's hanging out with that woman and why he is following her orders like she's his mom. She is sure that there's no way a rundown snack shop owner could be connected to a top kid from Dead Mansion. Sean stays tight-lipped, so Rachel decides to take action. She grabs his hand, launches him into the air, and slams him down to the ground like a sack of potatoes. I can tell the impact was pretty rough, judging by his groans of pain. Rachel then tells him to stop messing around. It's time for him to get back to the orphanage, because there's a whole line of clients waiting for him. Suddenly, Sean's mind flashes back to the painful memories which had been buried in his mind. He is standing in the middle of knocked out kids, and he's probably the one who left them out cold during their training. There is also this mysterious woman who gave him the name Park Syan, but he can't seem to remember her. In a sudden burst of shock, Sean blurts out and asks Rachel who this woman in his memories is. Rachel is confused by his random question, but before she can respond, Sean smashes his head into her nose, pushes her away, and gets back on his feet. As she pushes the blood out of her nose, her fury flares up. She demands to know if he really doesn't want to come back without a fight. But before she can make a move, Sean has already run away. He's sprinting across the rooftops, blown away that they sent Rachel after him. The image of the bloodied woman keeps flashing in his mind, and he's determined to figure out who she is, haunting his memories. Back at the Dead Mansion, the director is having a full-on meltdown over the news that Sean managed to escape. Rachel apologizes, saying he slipped away while she was momentarily distracted. But she also brings some good news. They've tracked down the old woman who's controlling Sean with the 3 principles. Turns out she's the one Sean recognizes as his parent. The director is thrown for a loop. How can an old woman be perceived as a parent? He asks Rachel if the old lady is intentionally using the 3 principles, but Rachel admits she can't be sure yet, and more investigation is needed before jumping to conclusions. The director decides it's best to verify things with the old woman before sending more resources after Sean. After a wardrobe change, Rachel steps out of the bathroom in this old lady disguise, leaving this other old woman confused, who can bet her life that she just had seen a young girl enter the restroom earlier. Meanwhile, the director is busy explaining to us that there are only 2 ways to retrieve a good child from their parents, and we'll learn about the first method soon enough. Back with Hyunho's mother, she is taken aback by the appearance of this elegant old lady. Rachel, under the disguise, sternly advises her to keep her distance from Sean. She introduces herself as Sean's mother, noting that she's often busy with business trips and hasn't paid much attention to her child. Now she's all dramatic about how it breaks her heart that Sean's been eating such awful spicy food. Hyunho's mother suddenly realizes that Sean can't handle spicy food and feels a bit of guilt for making him eat it all this time. It's a harsh wake-up call that she's been feeding him stuff that's clearly not good for him. Rachel is grinning inside, thrilled that this old hag is finally feeling some guilt. This is exactly the kind of reaction she was hoping for. You see, by getting the parent to voluntarily give up custody of the child is the first way to take a child back from the parent. And this is what Rachel is trying to achieve. So, she keeps her smooth talk, saying she understands that Sean listens to Hyunho's mother. So, Rachel tells her that when Sean comes back to eat here, she should sternly tell him never to return and go back home. It's a dirty play on Rachel's part, but it's all part of the plan. If Hyunho's mother tells Sean to go home, he'll take it as an order and head straight back to the dead mansion. Rachel starts to leave, but Hyunho's mother surprises everyone by refusing to say what Rachel suggested. Looks like Rachel's plan isn't going as smoothly as she hoped. Hyunho's mother speaks up, and it's a gut punch to Rachel's plan. She asks Rachel if she's even paid attention to her own son. She reveals that Sean is always covered in filth and dirt, and whenever she asks him about it, he just always says he fell. At first, she used to think he was just being a rebellious kid, but now it breaks her heart. It's clear to her that Sean needs someone who truly cares for him, unlike this rich woman who's clearly abandoned him. As she cries, she admits that she's come to care about Sean and doesn't want him to end up like Hyunho. She's willing to step up and take care of him since there's no one else around. Rachel clearly gets ticked off to hear this, and tries to tear into the old woman, but Hyunho's mom just bows her head and apologizes, saying she didn't mean to come off as rude. She's determined to keep an eye on Sean, no matter what. Seems like Rachel's first plan to snag Sean's ownership didn't go as smoothly as she'd hoped, and she's fuming. As night falls, she calls up the director and spills the beans about the failed attempt. The director seems disappointed to hear this, and he is clearly running out of patience. So, he gave her the green light to proceed with the second method. Rachel, now fully on board with this plan, eagerly agrees and looks forward to putting it into action. With a determined look, she sheds her garments to reveal a more wild side of herself, signaling that things are about to get serious. It turns out that, upon the death of the parent, the child reverts to the ownership of the dead mansion. So, her new target is Hyunho's mother. The scene shifts to outside a mart, where Hyunho's mother is seen shopping for groceries for her shop. And we can also see Rachel lurking in the shadows. She waits for the perfect moment, her finger poised over the detonate button of a bomb. When she decides it's time, she presses it, and the explosion rips through the air. The fire alarms blare and sprinklers kick on, dousing everything in water. But the blast wasn't aimed at Hyunho's mom, because it was merely a diversion. As Rachel's gun comes into view, she takes her aim. Just as she pulls the trigger, Sean swoops in, wielding a pan like a makeshift shield, and the bullet ricochets off his impromptu defense. Sean's face is etched with annoyance, while Rachel appears to be having the time of her life. Sean is amazed to see that the bullet-blocking move he picked up from a game actually worked in real life. He then drops the pan and strides toward Rachel, looking clearly annoyed by her actions. Like, he already knew that she would do something like this, but he reminds her that involving guns and bombs into the mix is just way too much. Rachel just smirks, her gun still aimed at the mother. Sean reacts quickly and shoves the shelf she was hiding behind. But the girl quickly bolts away before that shelf crashes over her. He then takes her by surprise and quickly disarms her with just one kick at her hand. But this girl is not messing around, and she quickly pulls out a dagger and swings at him, slashing his belly. Blood splatters to the ground, or so it seems. In reality, it was just a tomato ketchup tin our boy was holding that got punctured in the process. Sean tosses the ketchup tin away, making her lose her last weapon. He quickly tries to smash her with his knee, but she ducks and shoves his feet, sending him crashing into the shelves. She then asks him if he seriously thinks he can take her teacher down like this. She says she wanted to bring him back unharmed, but it looks like that's not an option anymore. Meanwhile, the mother is still trying to figure out what's going on. And that's when she spots a little kid stuck in the chaos, crying his eyes out. Amid all the commotion, he's sobbing for his mom. The woman rushes over, asking if he's hurt. The tearful kid just says he wants to go back to his mom. He asks her to help him get out of there, but it turns out this little punk is holding a sharp knife. No surprise if he's one of those specially trained kids here to assist Rachel to assassinate her. Back to the senior-junior showdown. She pulls out another knife and tries to hit him, but he jumps out of the way. She goes for another slash, but he ducks and avoids her. He grabs her hand, and she tells him to stop resisting because they're just trying to free him from everyone's control. Just then, he gets momentarily distracted, and Rachel seizes the moment. She pulls her hand free and swings her dagger at his face, slicing his cheek with deadly accuracy. He stumbles but quickly gets his footing. He grabs 2 cans from a nearby shelf and chucks them at her face, but she just knocks them away and tells him to let the old hag die. If he does, he can head back to the dead mansion whenever he wants. Sean then grabs a packet of flour and throws it right at her face. She makes the dumb mistake of slashing at the flour packet, sending it floating through the air and blocking her view. While struggling to breathe through the flour, she doesn't notice the scissors coming her way. Thanks to her quick reflexes, she narrowly avoids a serious cut, ending up with just a small mark on her face and her hair slightly trimmed. She quickly steps back, but Sean takes another swing at her. She drops to the floor, and with a crazy grin she gets back up and comes at him with her blades. Their strengths seem pretty evenly matched. Or maybe he's just better than his teacher now. Before she can figure out her next move, he grabs her hand and shoves her into a grocery cart, leaving her stuck inside like a little kid. Sean gives her a cold stare and asks if she has learned her lesson, but the woman just grunts in frustration. Sean tells her to leave him and his mother alone, then kicks her cart forward, leaving her slamming into the other carts lined up, and he quickly locks her cart with the rest. With a smirk, he tells her to enjoy herself and walks off, leaving her stuck and grumbling. Back to the little maniac kid, he sees his chance and swings his dagger at her chest while she's looking away. But Sean swoops in just in time, leaving the little kid stunned right there. The mother's confused, wondering why he's here when he should be at school and why his clothes are all messed up. Meanwhile, the kid on the ground recognizes Sean as the legend of the dead mansion and figures that if Sean's here, Rachel must have already been beaten by him. The woman explains that this little guy has lost his mother. Sean asks the kid for his parents' phone number, but the kid acts clueless and starts fake crying as he runs toward Hyunho's mother. Sean quickly grabs him, lifts him up, and tells him to stop whining. He then gets close to the kid's ear and asks him if he hasn't learned that sticking out too much just makes people dislike you. He further playfully threatens the kid with some cryptic talk and gives him a little slap, making the dagger the kid was holding drop. Sean quickly steps on the dagger to hide it, and that one slap was enough to knock the kid out cold. After that little showdown, we're back at the dead mansion. The director wakes up in the middle of the night because of an unexpected phone call. Grumbling, he throws on his gown and heads to the phone, hoping for some good news to make this early wake-up worth it. When he hears the caller's voice, a smile spreads across his face as he recognizes it's Sean on the line. He asks the old man if he really thought he could catch him with just Rachel and that little kid, Eugene. The old man's face quickly goes pale as he asks if Rachel is dead. Sean doesn't give him a direct answer, just says that no matter how many people he sends, the result will be the same. He can send as many as he wants, but it won't change a thing. The old man gets really worked up when he hears Sean is taking on the entire dead mansion instead of running away. Sean makes it clear that if there's a threat to the parents' safety, he'll handle it based on the third principle. He's more than ready to stick to the rules because he sees the dead mansion as a real threat and will react accordingly. The old man, now on the ground and naked, breaks into a wide grin and starts laughing maniacally. He's overjoyed to see that the kid he raised is surpassing his expectations and thinks of Sean as a divine gift, perfectly following the 3 principles. He wishes Sean good luck and tells him to send the little kid back, promising not to attack the lady if Sean does that. Sean then tells the old man to call Rachel back, and the director just gets even more excited. Can't wait to meet Sean face to face. Sean tells Eugene to wake the hell up. As soon as this little brat opens his eyes, he goes on high alert. Sean informs him that he's already taken away all the weapons he was hiding, so he should save his breath instead of looking for them. He further tells the kid to eat the food since he hasn't had anything to eat. Eugene hesitates at first, but soon devours all the food in no time. Once they start heading out, Sean asks if he liked the food. But this moody brat replies, "Not really." Sean cheekily points out that if he didn't like it, he wouldn't have chowed down like a wild dog. While they're bantering, Rachel finally shows up and looks relieved to see that the kid is alive. Rachel quickly calls the kid over and he meekly walks toward her. Sean tells Rachel to take the food and make sure to fill her belly too. But this woman gives him a cold look, saying he shouldn't act so cool and chill because she hasn't given up on him yet. She walks off, saying they'll meet again soon. Rachel then starts scolding the little kid, asking why an annoying brat like him couldn't take down the old woman. Eugene apologizes for failing, and Rachel, annoyed, dismisses him. She tells him that useless brats like him should have been dealt with a long time ago. Her words make the kid shiver, and he apologizes again. Just then, Sean calls out to the kid from behind, asking if the tteokbokki he ate was tasty, and he is asking this for one last time, so he better question wisely. The kid tilts his head and, with tears streaming down his face, he says it was tasty. That's all Sean wanted to hear, and he wastes no time telling Eugene they're going back to Hyunho's snack bar to taste this delicious delight once again. Before we dive further into the story, here's a quick rundown of Eugene's past. As you might already know, the ownership of the children from the dead mansion belongs to the buyers, or parents. If these parents die, ownership reverts back to the dead mansion. Eugene had been adopted multiple times, but each time his parents died. This cycle continued, and after yet another return due to the death of his latest owner, the director was disappointed and muttered about how many times it had happened. The boy quickly responded that it was the 4th time, but the old man snapped that he didn't ask for an answer. The director then stated they would continue to profit by sending Eugene to new families, but failing to keep his parents alive 4 times was the worst disgrace in the history of the dead mansion. He didn't shy away from reminding Eugene that if this continued, they would have no choice but to dispose of him. The old man asks the kid if he knows what happens to children who get disposed of. With those little graves behind him, the kid can pretty much guess what's coming. The old man tells him he'll need to become someone important. He's got one last shot. Go to Korea and help Rachel get Sean. If he screws this up too, he's definitely done for. In the present moment, Rachel coldly reminds him that, right now, he's already considered disposed of. Freaked out and desperate to prove himself, the kid begs for another chance. Rachel just gives him an icy stare. While the kid is freaking out because of what's coming, Sean steps in to save the kid. He asks if he wants to enjoy some delicious food again. The crummy woman jumps at the chance and tells the little kid that he's been given one last shot and he has to kill that old woman. Hearing this, the kid is on the verge of tears. Realizing he's been granted a final chance to prove himself, he starts crying and quickly says the food was delicious. So, while we thought this crummy little brat was just thrilled because Sean wanted to free him, it turns out he's actually just grateful for another shot at redemption. On the other hand, Sean cracks his wrists, ready to take the kid back to the snack shop. Rachel can tell that he still sees her as a threat to the parent, so she's sure he's prepared to fight if necessary. Even though she would happily hand Eugene over, Rachel gets dramatic, asking why Sean is taking him after promising to let them go if they spared the old woman. Sean simply shrugs and says the kid wants to stay himself, and since he finds the food delicious, he has no choice but to take him with him. She finally resigns, and decides to let Eugene go with Sean. Before the little kid heads over to Sean, Rachel cryptically reminds him that this is his last chance and he better make it worthwhile. With that, the kid quickly walks over to Sean. Rachel then points out that since he's keeping the child and breaking his promise to let them leave, she declares that she'll also break her promise and will always look for a chance to attack the old lady. Sean simply grabs the brat's hand and tells Rachel to do as she wishes. He adds that he won't hesitate to break her into pieces over and over again if she tries. Later, we're back at Hyunho's house. Sean pretends to yell at the little boy in front of Hyunho's mother. The woman quickly tells him to calm down and reminds him that he's the one who decided to look after the kid for the day. The boy admits it, but adds he doesn't want any more freeloaders crashing at her place for free food. The woman says she's perfectly fine with that. She also finds it interesting that this kid's mother is friends with Sean's mother. It turns out the truth isn't far off, as Sean's mother and this little brat are actually the same Rachel in disguise. The lady offers for them to stay, but Sean says it's not necessary. However, the little brat quickly thanks the woman, saying he'll be under her care from now on. Well, he can't let this opportunity slip because he wants to take her out at all costs. He then introduces himself as Eugene. Meanwhile, Sean is feeling a bit overwhelmed, as this is his first time at Hyunho's house. Sean asks if the room over there belongs to Hyunho, and she says it does. He asks if he can go inside, and the mother gives him the go-ahead. Sean walks into the room and finds it pretty ordinary, like something out of a drama or movie. It's the kind of room that feels like a moderately happy family lives there, with a vibe of everyday life and comfort. The room gives off a sense of warmth and normalcy that Sean has always longed for. It's the kind of typical family space he wished he could have been part of. He thinks Hyunho should have been here, living a happy, normal life, rather than being caught up in all the chaos. Once the brat finishes his meal, he thanks the lady and compliments her, saying everything was perfect, especially the omelet. The woman is pleased with the compliment. Then, the kid asks if he can ask her a question, and she agrees. He asks if, besides her son, there's any other family member living here, like a father. The woman is a bit caught off guard by the question and isn't sure how to respond. She tries to keep it light and says that unfortunately, her husband was needed so much in heaven that she had to let him go. The kid asks if he became a family member in heaven, to which the lady says that's pretty much it. Then, the kid points out that her son hasn't gone to heaven and hasn't returned home either. The woman is puzzled by this strange response. The kid continues, saying that a weak, useless child can't become family anywhere. The woman looks even more confused. The boy explains that a family is about fulfilling others' needs and proving one's worth to its members. Otherwise, they're just obstacles consuming resources, like her son who's in the hospital and unable to do anything. The lady is really pissed off and jumps up, saying that's completely wrong because that's not what a family is. The kid curiously asks what a family is then. But before she can answer, Sean playfully grabs the kid from behind and starts dragging him, asking if they can sleep in the living room. The woman agrees and mentions that Hyunho's room is empty, but Sean states that he can sleep in the living room over the sofas and the kid will just sleep on the floor. The mother's eyes warm up at their playful sight. As midnight strikes, we see Eugene's face is set in a scowl. It's clear that his displeasure stems from the fact that Sean is making him sleep over on the floor. He then notices light coming from Hyunho's room and decides to check it out. As he peeks inside, he sees the old woman sitting in a chair, looking at her son's photo. Eugene finds it odd that this woman calls her useless child a family, and even welcomes strangers like him as a family, whom she has never met before. He reflects on his own life, where a child's worth is measured by what they can produce for the family. He can't understand how being a so-called useless child can be considered family. Eugene quickly grabs the gun, aiming it at the old woman with trembling hands. He's desperate to prove his worth and become a necessary family member, believing that killing her is the only way to do it. But despite his determination, he just stands there, unable to pull the trigger. Sean quietly closes the door in front of him, and sternly asks if this is really what Eugene wants to do. Eugene's hands shake as he looks at Sean and admits he's just following orders. He then quickly turns the gun on our boy, telling him not to interfere. As he pulls the trigger, no bullet fires. Seeing this, Eugene looks puzzled, wondering why the gun is empty. Sean then scatters all those bullets down on the ground and reveals that he had already taken all the bullets away while Eugene was sleeping. He also knows that Rachel was the one who gave him the gun. Sean gives this brat death glares and extends his hand to grab the gun, pointing out that it's a 15-round 9mm parabellum that weighs 112.5 grams. He says the kid should have noticed the magazine was empty when he held the gun, and reminds him he's still just an amateur. Annoyed by the remark, the brat grabs his blade and tries to swing it at Sean. But he ends up pinned to the door by Sean, and as he turns the handle, the door swings open, sending them both crashing into the room. The little one quickly gets to his feet. Fortunately, the mother is still asleep at her desk and hasn't noticed the commotion. Sean gestures to the brat to keep quiet. But the little brat sees an opportunity and rushes forward. Sean quickly grabs that tie nearby, traps Eugene's feet with it, and makes him fall. But the kid manages to swing his blade and cut the tie almost immediately. Sean tells the kid to be a good little boy, but the kid's too stubborn. He leaps at Sean, trying to slash him with his tiny daggers. They go at it like two hyper ninjas, and it's clear Sean's holding back. This just makes Eugene even more furious, and he swings his dagger again, insisting Sean face him properly. Sean agrees, and before Eugene knows it, Sean has taken the dagger from his hand. The brat, frustrated, throws his other dagger at the lady, but Sean deflects it easily. He then pushes Eugene's feet against his own, causing him to fall. To keep the noise down, Sean quickly grabs the kid by his shirt before he hits the ground. Sean tells him with a smirk that he hasn't even started, and yet the brat is already down. But the little one just smiles in response, thrilled to be fighting the legendary figure from the dead mansion. Just as Sean is holding him, the mother slams a book over his head with a fury that could only come from the most dangerous person on the planet. She's absolutely livid that Sean is picking a fight with a little kid. Our boy quickly tries to reassure the angry mother that this isn't what it looks like. Meanwhile, the little brat grabs the dagger from the ground, seizing the opportunity to strike. Sean gives him a death glare and tells him to stop. Then, Sean quickly grabs the little one by the shoulders, reassuring the mother that they're just buddies having a morning exercise session and that the dagger is just a toy. Seems like this little one is still fixated on killing the woman, but realizes he won't get any chance while Sean is around, so he starts to think of a sneakier approach to get the job done. The lady turns to Eugene and tells him he shouldn't pick fights with his big brother because they're all one family under one roof. The word family catches Eugene off guard again, and he gets somber, finally asking why he's being considered part of this family. Sean quickly reminds him that they eat together and sleep under the same roof. The woman agrees and pats Eugene, saying that since he's living here, he's already part of the family. Just then, someone knocks on the door, calling out to see if anyone is inside. The mother goes to answer and, upon opening the door, finds a young high school girl. Well, or should I say, Rachel in disguise. Anyway, she greets the lady as Mother, apologizes for arriving so early, and introduces herself as Marie, Eugene's older sister. Rachel, in her Marie disguise, thanks the mother for taking care of Eugene. Sean peeks over and asks who's at the door. The mother tells him Eugene's sister has arrived to pick him up. Sean recognizes who this sister really is, so he steps outside to greet her. He asks Rachel what brings her here, and she simply says she's here to pick Eugene up. Rachel drops the little sister act and cheekily explains that she's there to take the boy back for the woman's safety. As agreed, Sean then asks if she's the one who ordered Eugene to kill the mother. Rachel leans in and whispers that it was just a temporary order from her, and there's nothing to worry about. Sean tells her, first of all, to put away the knives she's hiding before saying that. She tells our boy not to worry and reassures him that as long as he cooperates, there's nothing to fear. Sean is a bit creeped out by how casually she's threatening him and asks what happens if he doesn't cooperate. Suddenly, Eugene bursts out with a big smile, asking why his sister took so long to get here. He hugs her right away, and she's all dramatic, showing her happiness at seeing him. But while she's being all cheerful, she quietly reminds Eugene that he's failed again and that the director will be pretty disappointed. Eugene snaps at her, asking if she's playing dumb or something. He explains that he hasn't ditched his mission, he's just trying to blend in with these people as family before making his move against the woman. He reminds her that the mother is guarded by the legendary hand of the dead mansion. He might look like an unattractive dumb monkey, but he's no ordinary Joe. In fact, he has fought Sean many times and failed miserably each time. Rachel agrees, saying he really does look like a kind of fool monkey. She apologizes for messing up his operation, but reassures him there's nothing to worry about right now. They're ditching their current mission and heading back to the dead mansion right away. As Rachel extends her hand, the boy grabs it quietly, ready to leave with her. They announce they're heading out, and while Rachel shakes hands for a final goodbye, the little boy turns his head, telling her to let's go, probably because he doesn't want to look at the mother. He starts walking away with her. Just then, the mother calls out to Eugene, smiling and telling him to come back next time, and promises to make him an omelet just for him. The little one looks back at the mother with a touch of admiration, offering a faint smile and a simple nod to show he heard her. The mother then tells Sean to make sure to visit again with Eugene. She promises to cook up something nice for them both. Sean agrees and says he'll definitely bring Eugene along next time. The next day, we're at the school principal's office. The principal starts by apologizing for the delay, explaining that the school had to go through several committees to decide on the punishments, which took some time. He gives her the good news that the perpetrator's parents have promised to cover the damages, and all the offending kids will be suspended. The woman listens quietly, and when the principal shows her the file listing all the perpetrators, she's stunned to see a familiar face, and she quickly asks what the hell Sean's photo is doing in the file. Let's turn our attention to the dead mansion, and check what's up with this unhinged organization. Inside, the director was on a call, receiving the rundown of what happened to Rachel's mission, and he sounded pissed. Back in her everyday undisguised look, Rachel could only apologize to her boss. She explained that she ordered Eugene to kill the old woman, but that plan did not pan out as it was supposed to. Rachel attributed the failure to the kid being a defective and useless product incapable of killing an old woman. He's a dud who can't even carry out an order properly. The director halted Rachel's angry rant, steering the conversation to what he really wanted to hear. He had already handed down the order to retrieve Eugene and leave the old woman alone, and yet she still went crazy and ordered the kid to eliminate the poor woman. From the director's perspective, Rachel is the one failing to carry out the mansion's orders properly, and you really don't want to disobey this man. She insisted that the only thing she failed at was retrieving Sean. However, the director placed great importance on promises regardless of who the promise was made to. That's just his principle. With a crazed look, the director preached that before God, there should only be faith and trust. Everything else aside from those is heresy. However, there are still good children who lack faith. He had no choice but to create the controlling measure called the 3 principles. So, Rachel must remember the consequences of uncontrolled and unexpected events from the past. Orders, principles, and promises. These are the absolute rules of Dead Mansion. Hearing the director's preaching over the phone, Rachel's faith was stoked. But she was still concerned about the retrieval of Sean. They can't give up so easily. The director has other plans for that in the near future, though. There are many ways to handle that matter without directly touching the old woman and making an enemy out of Sean. Mary, who posed as Eugene's sister, had already started the operation using her multiple smartphones. The very next day, Sean went to school as usual. He looked deathly tired and bored, and the lectures had not even started yet. He noticed that some of his classmates were looking at him differently. There were hints of fear and vigilance in their eyes. Walking to his seat, he casually asked his seatmate what was up and why everyone was acting so weird. Maybe people are just on edge for an exam he didn't know about. Seeing as his seatmate was tight-lipped, Sean got a little frustrated. The first ones to talk to him were the big bastards sitting in the last row of the class. They wanted to know if what they heard about Park Chyan was for real. It turned out that Mary had already propagated photos of Sean choking out Hyunho. It was a pretty blatant piece of evidence that he was a bully. He could quickly tell that this was a low-quality photoshopped image, but for untrained eyes, it probably looked real. When asked where they got the pictures, the big bastards at the back of the class seemed reluctant to spill. After a few seconds of thinking, the three big bastards lowered their heads to apologize, admitting that they were wrong all this time. There were rumors going around that Park Chyan beat up Joseph, taking the guy on as an underling. This ridiculous rumor had already spread all over the school. They were saying that Joseph was terrified of Chyan. There were even reports of him being friends with gangsters. They had all the pictures to back it up, and these photos were going too far. Word is that Chyan ordered Joseph to take care of that Hyunho kid in the first place. Hearing that last bit of rumor made his stomach turn. What are these people talking about now? He tried to vehemently deny any involvement with the tragedy that Hyunho went through, but no one believed his words. Just like that, his name was dragged through the mud in just a single night. No matter how badly he wanted to deny the allegations, no one would believe him. It also attracted the attention of the wrong crowd, like the big bastards in the back row. They were shoving and pushing people around Chyan, trying to suck up to the new big dog in town. The big bastard even threatened an innocent bystander to shut up or end up like Hyunho. Hearing those threats, Chyan stepped in to clamp the bastard's heavy hand. Chyan laughed, playing it off like he was trying to hide his involvement. He then invited the big bastard Sumjin outside to give them the real story of what actually happened. The other classmates were visibly fearful and disgusted by his words and demeanor. But this was the only way he could control the situation. Dead Mansion is really putting him through social torture. He let all the thugs out of the room with the same lackadaisical attitude he always had. As soon as they got far enough, the classroom erupted with muted discussions regarding Park Chyan's behavior. With the attack on his image underway, Chyan had to skip today's classes to dig for more information. He hung out with a bunch of thugs behind the school grounds. He found out that everybody received the photoshopped pictures in the group chat earlier this morning before school. The account just shared the photo, stirred the pot with a few words, and left. Of course, the highest names on the suspect list were those persistent Dead Mansion people. He still can't pinpoint their endgame with this plan, though. For now, he'll play along, acting like he just wanted to lead a quiet school life. But the cat's out of the bag now. He even mentioned transferring to another school again. His mood darkened as he told the big bastards that he wanted to graduate without trouble. He doesn't want to get caught up in pranks like this. He's way past the point of troubling himself with childish problems. He has his hands full with the world of adults. So he tasked the big body bastards to make sure that this matter didn't spread any further. Calling them his crew, keeping this quiet was their first job. Hearing Chyan order them around, calling them a crew, made these big boys blush like schoolgirls. While he was receiving their praise, a familiar figure just happened to pass by the dark alleyway. It was none other than Hyunho's mom. She just saw Chyan interacting with what looked like a bad crowd. This brings us back to the principal's office, where she was trying to deny that Chyan was involved in her son's case. She firmly believed that Chyan and Hyunho were friends, and there must have been some kind of misunderstanding along the way. But the principal had already gotten hold of the infamous photo circulating around the school. In addition, there's a testimony that he hung out with Joseph in the past. With all the available information planted recently, even the principal believed that Park Chyan was the original instigator of this mess. Hyunho's mother sat in that office, her mind reeling from disbelief. The principal added that contacting Chyan's parents was impossible. They seemed to think that the kid didn't receive a proper family education. As an educator, the principal knew far too many cases where a child such as Chyan could easily go astray. Humbly wiping his sweaty face, the principal urged the old lady to stop trusting the kid so much. Meanwhile, Chyan still wasn't seeing the bigger picture. He only hoped that the rumors would quiet down and eventually die out. Those buff bros have a surprisingly innocent side to them. They were so easily manipulated into becoming his underlings. Just as he was laughing to himself, Sean noticed something odd nearby. He stopped laughing and asked the figure hiding behind the alley if her name was Mary. She eventually showed herself with a wide smile. She thought she was hiding pretty well, so she wasn't expecting to get spotted so fast. As professional advice, Sean urged her to erase that strong coffee smell before going on a covert mission. This happened in front of Hyunho's house last time too. Mary was quite shocked to hear that the legendary Sean could even catch a whiff of someone's scent from so far away. It was almost creepy in a way. Sean took the opportunity to ask what her deal was and what she got from making his life more complicated than it already was. But she knew that this young man enjoyed the thrill of it all. She even caught the cool act he showed those buff bastards in the dark alley. Sean cringed a little, not expecting to be under such heavy surveillance. Mary wanted to ask how it feels to be slotted into the top bully position at school. Sean finally snapped. Being in such a negative spotlight wasn't his style at all. He was already popular to begin with. But she wasn't talking about all that. She wanted to know what he thought about the cold and harsh gazes of his peers, the eyes filled with betrayal and contempt underneath. Mary genuinely wanted to know if Sean liked that stuff. Used to such crazy characters from the mansion, Sean stayed chill and confirmed if she was behind all those photos. He admitted that it was well made for its purpose, but it was still a little crude for his tastes. She made a perfect weapon, just good enough to fool the general public. Mary admitted that, given the tight schedule and limited resources, she had to settle for something crude. All Sean was hearing were excuses. Slowly lifting his eyes with a mocking grin, he turned to Mary and said the word, "Scratch." The young lady's smile did not dissipate, but her hand darted into her bag with unprecedented speed. Sean immediately jumped out of the way. His bag suffered 3 gunshot wounds from the conveniently obscured gun inside Mary's purse. He found himself hiding behind concrete walls while trying to pacify Mary. This was Korea. They can't just take a gun out whenever they want. Besides, the mansion's supposed to retrieve him, not kill him. When asked what Mary would do if he was hit, she just laughed and argued that Sean could easily deal with this much firepower without any problems. But in her own opinion, the legend of Sean should just die. She thinks it would be better if they just discard him, not waste more resources for his retrieval. Walking into the dark alley away from the prying eyes of the public, Mary casually tossed her ruined purse away. She was now creeping in with a Glock in her hand. Sean erased his presence, letting the young lady walk deeper into the darkness to find him. Once he deemed the timing was right, Sean pounced at Mary, aiming to remove the gun from her hand. His grip strength was so absurd that the young lady could not make the firearm budge with 2 hands. He slammed Mary right into the nearby wall, hoping to shake her enough to let go of the Glock. But the girl was tough. She knew how to minimize impact damage. More importantly, she knew how to retaliate. Lifting her legs, Mary drew a hidden blade from under her skirt. It was just a tiny knife between her knuckles, but the experience she had wielding such a sneaky weapon made her deadly. Sean immediately protected his vital areas, but he was forced to take Mary's sudden attack. His eyes were as clear as they could be. While moving with zero wasted motion, he asked if this was all she had. Maybe Dead Mansion is really dead now if this is their best. Sean eventually got her in a chokehold, swiping the gun away. He pinned the young lady down on the cold, hard ground of the streets. Keeping her in place with one hand and balling his fist with the other, Mary must have never expected to go down so quickly. Instead of despair, she rolled over with a sly smile on her face. When it came to the matter of being defeated, Mary would like to beg to differ. That immediately became clear when a familiar voice made Sean snap out of his murderous daze. It was Hyunho's mom. She had just finished discussing Cheyenne with the principal, fighting for his name. Now, the young man was out in the street, towering over a young girl, seemingly raising his fist against her. Suddenly, the poor mother didn't know what to believe anymore. This polite young man was supposed to be her son's friend, so why was he behaving like a thug? Mary might be the one lying down on the floor, but she had the smile of someone very pleased with herself. Hyunho's mom finally asked Park Cheyenne if it really was him who hurt her son. Cheyenne immediately sobered up, realizing what his position might look like to those who didn't have the assassination context. Mary was not going to let him get another word of explanation in, though. The young lady played up her distress, getting up from the ground and crying while pleading for Hyunho's mother. Given that they were partly acquainted with one another, the mom asked what exactly was going on with Mary and Cheyenne. No matter how much he tried to discredit her words, he was unable to do so. When the mom yelled at him, calling his full name, Cheyenne was stunned. His obedience made it impossible to go against her words. When she ordered him to stay right where he was standing, he had no other choice but to follow. So, he did not dare move another inch. Balling his fist in frustration, he recalled the 3 principles. A parent's command was absolute. Mary then started pouring toxic ideas into the mom's ears. On that day, when she got Eugene back home, the kid's body was covered in bruises, and they wouldn't talk about the injuries. According to Mary, the kid kept insisting that brother Cheyenne had done it. Recalling that time when she caught Cheyenne wrestling with the kid as Cheyenne made an excuse that they were just doing some morning exercises, it wasn't hard for Hyunho's mom to connect the dots. There was also the principal's assessment and the testimony regarding Cheyenne's link with Joseph. Mary continued that she just wanted to ask Cheyenne about what really happened, only for the young man to lash out and hit her in the process. Cheyenne naturally denied these allegations as much as he could. The dubious Mary was laughing at him on the inside. They might not be allowed to touch Sean's new mother, but there are plenty of ways to get to him without the threat of violence. Sean tried his best to appeal to the mom. He asserted that Mary was a liar, and all it got him was a crisp slap on the face. Sean was speechless. His mom had just laid her hands on him. According to the principles, all Dead Mansion has to do is make the current parent give up on Sean herself. Right now, that's precisely what she was doing. As the upset old lady continued to express her disappointment and anger, Sean feared for her following words. Finally, she told him to never come back ever again. That was the final nail in the coffin. Everything went as Mary had planned. She was quite a genius. As she was about to get into the next phase of her plans, a familiar disguised face made itself known. Her stride was broad and powerful. She commanded an air of confidence and control. It was none other than Sister Rachel in her mommy disguise. It was time for her to swoop in and play the role of the disgruntled parent of a troublemaking child. Lifting her glasses, she sounded like an exhausted mother who couldn't handle the antics of a hopeless child. When she told Cheyenne that it was about time to go home now, the young man was visibly shaken. He did not want to return. Back in the dead mansion, the director flashed his disgusting grin, showing his bejeweled teeth. On the phone, he had just received updates regarding the success of Sean's retrieval. He praised Mary for such an excellent job. The perv was so excited at the prospect of his greatest weapon coming back that he lost all strength in his knees. He kneeled before a painting of the Lord and thanked the heavens for answering his prayers. The director attributed all the success to Mary and her twisted ideas. She made a truly befitting resolution as Dead Mansion's most excellent strategist. Acting modest despite all the praise, Mary insisted that she just did what the director wished for, and she would continue doing so. When the old perv started going on and on about how the legend of Dead Mansion was finally going home, that Sean was finally joining their ranks again, Mary's mood took a turn for the worse. Her next orders were to return as quickly as possible, and she accepted the task without a fuss. On the other side of the room were Sister Rachel and the parentless weapon, Sean. They were busy eating pizza, ice cream, spicy noodles, and all kinds of good food. Rachel commented on how similar their tastes were when it came to food, knowing full well that Sean was just eating whatever she ordered him to eat. On second look, this demonic nun was actually forcing him to eat pineapple pizza with a side of mint ice cream. This was worse than torture, if you ask me. This was Rachel's way of making sure that Sean severed his connection with that accidental parent. Just like before, she had complete control over the young man's actions. She was sure that Dead Mansion could finally regain ownership over their star. Meanwhile, Sean was practically begging for milk to counteract the heat lingering in his mouth. While busy with the torturous dinner, a man sitting in a wheelchair arrives to check on Rachel and her mission of capturing Sean. It turned out to be Joseph's psychopathic dad, Kwon Byung-woo. He was also the one backing up Dead Mansion by providing Sister Rachel's accommodations and resources. When asked, she replied that the most expensive penthouse in the area they were being housed in was passable. It was not too bad. Sean reckoned that the voice of that vegetable sounded familiar. The psycho wasn't bothered by all the nonsense. All he cared about was catching the damned brat that put him in the chair. He would gladly spend any amount of money to make it happen. Realizing who this psycho was, Sean snapped out of his spicy noodle drunkenness and stood up from his seat. He teased that the psycho must be trying out cosplay or something with all the bandages and the wheelchair. This naturally pissed off Joseph's father. This encounter could have escalated out of control if it had not been for Sister Rachel to step in with authority. Pulling out a mini Uzi from God knows where, she pointed its muzzle at the wheelchair-bound psycho. She asserted that, as discussed, Dead Mansion would take custody of Sean and no one else. In return, the organization would not touch Joseph. That was the condition of their deal. The psycho turned around and assured her that he was clear on the details. This was just business after all. Before heading out, the psycho added that Sean was not the only one he was seeking revenge on. Since this didn't concern her at all, Sister Rachel gave the psycho the green light to handle his revenge against other people as he wished. Sitting in front of Sean, Rachel teased that if the psycho guy went on to kill Hyunho's mom as revenge, the Dead Mansion wouldn't lift a finger to retaliate. Sure, the organization promised not to touch the old woman, but they never agreed to a protection mission either. Realizing that Hyunho's mom might be in grave danger without any sort of protection, something inside Sean was spurred on. He imagined what she must be doing right now. She would be diligently preparing all those delicious snacks to sell. A customer approached the stall and promptly ordered one of her famous rice cakes. The customer even added a few more fried snacks too. Just as Sean was thinking about her, she was also thinking about the kid. She saw a child eager to make her feel better in the toughest time of her life. The customer interrupted her thoughts by adding some delicious-looking kimbap to his order. She just could not shake the thoughts of that sweet young man away. Why would there be pictures of him seemingly messing with Hyunho? Believing all the shady information around, she tried to convince herself that the young man was just a bad child. He was a thug who put her son in the hospital. Distracted by everything going on inside her mind, the old lady accidentally cut her finger. She dropped the knife on the floor as the shock of being wounded made her curl in pain. Seeing this, the customer hurriedly entered the kitchen to see if she was okay, as he could see a lot of bleeding. The mother kept insisting that she was okay. With tears in her eyes, she assured the customer and herself that it would stop soon. Mr. Customer calmed down upon hearing that. Then, this bastard started pulling out a hidden knife from his pockets. Gripping the blade while keeping it obscured, the seemingly concerned customer slowly closed the remaining gap between him and the target. He remembered receiving the orders from the boss, so he would not have to worry about the cleanup after the job. All he had to do was sneak up to the old lady and go for the kill, and their partner company would handle everything after that. Just one hiccup though, Hyunho's mom just picked up a phone call. She must have just received massive news as her eyes darted open in shock upon hearing what the person on the other line said. Hyunho's mom hurriedly turned around and ran out of the shop. She didn't even see the man's knife. She just told the customer to eat as much as he wanted free of charge. When asked where she was going, she simply answered that she was heading for her son. It turned out that Hyunho had miraculously regained consciousness. That phone call was from the hospital, notifying his mom that the kid had awakened. Doctors and nurses hurriedly poured into the hospital room to assess Hyunho's condition. The kid seemed responsive, but it was still pretty hard for him to speak. The doctor advised that he take it easy and stop pushing too hard. When asked if he remembered anything before getting hurt, the young man stared at the ceiling and solemnly answered that he did. The last thing he remembered was yelling at his mom and feeling like the biggest asshole for it. He could remember her standing meekly and apologizing for doing something nice for her little boy. While he was unconscious, all he could think about was how wrong he was for treating his mom with so much disrespect. All he wanted to do was apologize to her. Then the waterworks finally came down. Experiencing all these overwhelming emotions, Hyunho seemingly regressed to a kid desperately looking for his mom. He missed her dearly, and he felt horrible about how their last interaction turned out. As if on cue, his mom barged into the room. She was still red and exhausted from running all the way to her son's hospital room. She made her way in between the doctors and nurses. She only had eyes for her son. The medical practitioners around the old lady eventually noticed that there was blood on her hands. Quite a lot of it, actually. Hyunho grabbed her bloody hand and apologized with as much sincerity as he could muster. He wasn't all there yet mentally, but he just wanted to tell his mom that he was wrong. He was so wrapped up in his own problems that he hurt his mom along the way. Hearing those words from a son you thought was never going to wake up overwhelmed the old lady with all kinds of emotions. Near the door, the assassin customer sent by the psycho was still tailing the poor old lady. He called his boss, telling him that the mom and son were in the same location. They could just simply handle the two together when the chance presented itself. But the boss ordered the operation to stop. The psycho smiled menacingly as he formulated a change of plans. Back in the penthouse, Sister Rachel was going sicko mode on the furniture around her. Nothing was spared from her rage. Her mouth was bleeding while she was holding her submachine gun. She was chanting curses as if she had been wronged by someone. That's because she had been. That psycho, Joseph's father, dared to kidnap Sean, breaking their agreement. The psycho had just thought of a much more exciting plan. He could personally handle Hyunho and his mother right in front of Sean's eyes. Going back a few days ago, we went to the White Tiger Job Center, where laborers are always for hire. Inside, Sister Rachel felt uneasy with her mission. Beside her was that kid, Eugene. Both were on pins and needles while sitting on the couch, waiting for any updates. They were greeted by a pretty office lady with a nice smile. In her hand were 3 cups of coffee for herself and the guests. Rachel criticized the lady for moving so slowly, asking if making her wait so long was worth it. The office lady laughed lightly and apologized for taking so long. She explained that the market and Byungwoo Construction's headquarters were in shambles due to the many things that had to tally after Rachel had made such a big mess. The lady offered Eugene a little cup of hot chocolate, reminding him to drink slowly. Surprised, the kid thanked her for offering. Sister Rachel looked unamused. They were shelling out quite a bit of cash, so a little trouble shouldn't be bothersome. This was a professional agreement after all. Hearing her mention professionalism, the office lady took a seat and agreed they should conduct themselves as professionals. But isn't it deeply unprofessional when one party makes a massive mess without considering the aftermath? That's what the office lady thought. Hearing the lady take a jab at her actions annoyed Sister Rachel. She was quite adept at disguising her words with pleasantries, though. Eugene just sat there in the middle of all the tension, thinking he should have just stayed at the house. Anyway, the office lady had already taken care of everything, and it was up to Rachel to look at the reports, even though she was being blatantly disrespected by coffee served in a paper cup. Byungwoo Constructions also said they didn't need any compensation for damages. The office lady was quite curious about that. Rachel answered that it was an equal exchange between two parties. That's how professionals get things done. Whatever mess Byungwoo Constructions made would have nothing to do with the dead mansion. But the office lady gravely advised Rachel to take a more careful approach from now on. Curious about the ominous tone, Rachel asked what that advice meant. The office lady asserted that professionals should deal with other professionals, not with reckless delinquents. This Byungwoo Constructions organization was a little too hard to trust. Against Rachel's judgment, maybe they were not worthy of being business partners. Back to the present, she was experiencing the fallout of not listening to the office lady's advice and distrust for the dubious Kwon Byung-woo. The chairs and tables of the penthouse suffered in the hands of the angry nun. When she brings out the guns, you know it's serious. It turned out that the psycho had Sean kidnapped and boarded in a moving truck. Kwon Byung-woo's lifeless eyes poked through the bandages, pleased with the sight of the young man he so badly wanted to punish. He was not expecting such an efficient killing machine to be so useless without the orders of a parent. He rolled up to the young man, petting Sean's hair. Now that he's under Dead Mansion's guidelines, Sean can't really do anything without their proper orders. The psycho was very fascinated by such a powerful degree of brainwashing. Looking at Sean's wild eyes, Kwon Byung-woo could feel his twisted desires flaring up. Turning his chair around, Byung-woo laughed like a kid as he suddenly thought of something interesting. He imagined getting into contact with the organization and purchasing Sean to be his property. From then on, he could just order Sean to kill the old woman from the snack shop. That would be a twisted scenario that only an unhinged mind could think of. Laughing like a maniac, the psycho was quite pleased with how interesting that idea would be to see. He toned down the teasing a little bit. He urged the young man to chill out a little, as they hadn't even gotten started yet. Soon enough, he would tear that old woman and her injured son into pieces right in front of Sean's helpless eyes. Because of the state-of-the-art brainwashing programming he went through, the young man wouldn't be able to do anything but watch as it unfolds. He can't do anything without orders after all. All he had to do was sit still, gagged and bound while watching the show. Shortly after that, it would be his turn to experience the pain himself. Kwon Byung-woo had already told Sean that he would kill everyone involved in this case. You could say that he's a man of his word. Back in the hospital, threats had been removed, and the doctors and nurses made sure that Hyunho was stable. His mom was lovingly peeling an apple at his bedside. She really was a goated mom when it came to caring for her child. With only the two of them in the room, Hyunho asked his mom about the cut on her finger. He wondered if she had accidentally sliced herself. She immediately waved it off, not wanting to worry her son. She told him it was just a little nick and nothing too serious, but Hyunho was done with being a shitty son. He knew his mom would always downplay how bad things were. Forcing himself to get up, he wanted to ask around for some bandages. He told her that he should be trying to move around a little anyway. She had to stop him from trying to dash off, promising to get some bandages for her wound. Before exiting the room, she mentioned how stubborn Hyunho was. He must have gotten the trait from his father. Much to the old lady's surprise, the hallway outside the hospital room was unusually dark, devoid of any light at all. She managed to reach the front desk to ask if anyone was in, but there were no responses. Just as she was wondering where everyone went, a man wearing a suit snuck up from behind. Even with a broken arm, the man only needed one strike to render the old lady unconscious and collapsing on the floor. As soon as she hit the ground heavily, the man noted one down on his list of targets. Byung-woo's henchman looked at Sean while he ordered his lackeys to put the old lady in the car first. Mr. Henchman was fascinated by the fact that Sean, the young man who could easily dismantle a powerful organization with tons of security, couldn't do anything without being ordered to do so. Hyunho's hospital room door slid open with an impatient intensity. He thought his mom had come back after taking so long, but what he saw was an injured man riding in with his wheelchair. Kwon Byung-woo looked crazy, as always, as he apologized for taking so long to get in the room. He was excited to finally see what Hyunho looked like. He was looking forward to having a face-to-face with the young man his son almost killed. Unaware of who this guy was, Hyunho felt uneasy and scared. As more men wearing suits poured into the room, Byung-woo casually introduced himself as Joseph's father. He fixated on Hyunho's broken leg, noting how much damage Joseph had inflicted on the poor boy. Byung-woo found all the violence regrettable. He extended his hand to touch the young man's cast as he noted how much it must hurt. This was precisely why he tried teaching his unruly son that efficiency is key to everything. By leaving a witness to the crime half alive and badly hurt, Byung-woo had to step in and do all the dirty work again. Finally realizing that the tree was worse than the fruit, Hyunho froze in his bed, fear taking hold of his mind. A few meters away from the hospital, a woman wearing leather tights all over her body disgruntledly admitted that the office lady from White Tiger Job Center was right. Sister Rachel conceded that she should not have worked with those unprofessional bastards for such a critical mission. In her hand was a zipline gun. Upon firing, the minimal noise barely raised the suspicion of the men inside the hospital room. That did not matter, though. She's never been one to prefer a silent and slow operation. Ziplining into the extraction point, the nun smiled as if she was having a blast. Using the momentum from the zipline ride, Rachel kicked the windows open, not stopping until her foot reached one of the third-rate delinquents. At this point, the crazed nun was just yelling about her dear Sean and the disgusting betrayal of Dead Mansion. Kwon Byung-woo wasn't surprised with Rachel's bombastic entrance. He always knew that she would come looking for the golden boy. Watching Sister Rachel cleave through rows upon rows of gangsters was a sight to see. She was supremely skilled in the art of soloing multiple men. With every skillful dodge, she would dish out injuries to the next unsuspecting victim, neutralizing them efficiently. When swinging her blade to rip through a man's flesh, she wouldn't bat an eye. Her smile would only grow bigger. After quickly clearing Byung-woo's gangsters unimpeded, Sister Rachel was finally caught by one of the men's grabs. He repeatedly yelled that he got her, and the boys immediately readied themselves to mount an attack. Rachel became unusually calm as she asked the man if he liked hugging her from behind so much. With her signature disturbed smile, Rachel smashed the back of her head into the grappler's face. That was an easy way to cut herself loose from the lock. Upon freeing herself, the slaughter continued as more and more suited-up gangsters hit the hospital floor cold. Her entire body was a weapon. Receiving a kick from the crazy nun was a death sentence. Realizing that they might have flown too close to the flames, Byung-woo ordered his men to grab Hyunho first and transfer him to the next destination as they continued their plan. Times like this made having a motorized wheelchair very worth it. The psycho drifted and shifted as he zoomed out of the room. They exited to God knows where while Rachel continued taking everyone down one by one. With a hint of impatience in her voice, she asked where the thugs were trying to go. She didn't care about these damned bastards. She just wanted to see Sean again. The only one left to face her now was the henchman with a broken arm. As soon as he snapped his fingers, even more gangsters poured out of different hospital rooms. They looked like battle-hardened thugs who wouldn't take it easy against a lone woman. Sister Rachel looked around, realizing that she had stepped into a troublesome trap. From left to right, men wielding big blades surrounded her. Could she even cleave through all these people to safety? We'll find out. She couldn't fathom the reason why they had amassed so many gangsters to help. They looked like a bunch of roaches pouring into the hallway. There was even one whose weapon choice was the iconic chainsaw. After revving it up, the grisly sound of the motor filled the halls. Rachel raised her hands and admitted that she was impressed with them bringing interesting tools of slaughter. Since they were kind enough to show her something cool, it was only fair that she took out her tools too. By tools, she meant the plethora of guns she had concealed under her coat. Taking submachine guns into either hand, she pointed the Uzis at the unfortunate gangsters. Rachel's trigger-happy finger unleashed a rain of bullets while taunting the thugs to come at her if they could. Even the bravest men would hesitate to rush in once they saw their comrades dying on the floor, bleeding out from bullet wounds. The chainsaw guy was still alive. He hadn't moved an inch from his position since earlier. Rachel effectively controlled the situation by doing what she did best: chaos. Since it looked like she wanted to play with guns, the henchman would play along. He did so by bringing Sean out from where he was being stashed to watch. Hidden behind the other gangsters, the henchman fired a gun from his seemingly broken arm. It hit Sister Rachel on her thigh, causing quite a nasty bleed. She did not look hurt, though. If anything, she looked more pissed instead. The crafty henchman had actually used his fake broken arm to conceal a firearm inside the cast for a chance like this. Finally dropping the broken arm act, he assured Rachel that the next bullet would be aimed at her head. Hearing this threat, something inside Sean switched on. Forcing himself to remove his gag, he asked the henchman if he had just threatened to kill Rachel. Before realizing what was going on, a blur was already heading for Byung-woo's right-hand man. Sean had effectively neutralized the two strong men, keeping him captive in one fell swoop, and finally launched a nasty straight into the right-hand man's face, knocking his glasses away. This wasn't supposed to happen. Sean was supposed to be a useless hostage if no new orders were issued. What they did not take into account was the fact that he currently belonged to Dead Mansion itself. The henchman had just threatened to kill a trainer of Dead Mansion, and it invoked one of the three principles. According to the third principle, Sean could now classify every thug in this hallway as a threat to the organization itself. With nothing but rage in his fists, he swore to break through the current situation and fulfill his duty. The thugs were now looking at Dead Mansion's deadliest weapon, codename Sean. Sean marched forward, acting according to the third principle and classifying the thugs as a threat to the Dead Mansion. Now he had the justification to break through. His captor foolishly tried to wrestle Sean back, attempting to stop him from slipping away like a little rat. But despite their size difference, the grapple was deflected. Sean countered with a nasty straight to the face, knocking a few teeth loose. It was so bad that the poor thug developed a speech defect. Sean added salt to the wound by calling the bleeding thug a baby for crying over teeth and smashed another fist for good measure. The final piece of the combo was a jackhammer to the head, flattening the fool's skull structure. While raining bullets on the thugs that tried to approach, Rachel was analyzing Sean. Without a parent, she wasn't sure why Sean was fighting back. She somehow deluded herself into thinking that Sean was taking action solely for her sake, out of concern. Meanwhile, our boy was just handing out critical punches left and right. When one thug tried to come at him while swinging a metal pipe, he managed to dodge in the nick of time. There were just too many thugs to mow through, so Sean needed to get a decent weapon to go sicko mode. Seeing a potential equip, he rolled over the hospital counter. Thinking he was cornered with nowhere to go, a bald thug vaulted over the counter too. But as soon as he arrogantly poked his head through, it was met with the sharpness of a syringe. Sean stabbed poor Baldy in the freaking eyes. That was just the start though. Sean took the array of injections from the counter and told his patients to be patient. He asserted that what was to come would be painful. Jumping over the thugs, he unleashed a rain of injections with perfect accuracy. He called it vaccination time. As the gangsters hurried to get the needles out of their bodies, Sean pushed the tempo even more. He started by grabbing another bastard's face and smashing it headfirst into the ground. The display of strength and brutality stunned the rest of the gangsters for a moment, prompting them to draw their weapons. That was until one brave thug yelled at everyone to get out of the way while he revved a chainsaw. Buzzcut came in with the intention of splitting the kid in two, wearing a freaky smile on his face. Sean immediately booked it out of there, acting as if he was flustered by the horror movie weapon. He was aiming for a sharp corner turn that could hide him out of sight for a second. When Buzzcut turned the same corner, he was met with a hurtling stretcher sweeping him off his feet. This little trick almost got Sean's head split in two, but the length of the electric chainsaw didn't reach. Buzzcut was dazed by his sudden position. Sean tying him up tightly to the stretcher did not help either. Sean asked Buzzcut how he was planning to use the chainsaw while pushing the stretcher. Their destination was the pile of gangsters loitering in the halls of the hospital. Looking like a madman enjoying his makeshift torture weapon, Sean pushed the stretcher with full force. The next minute was full of gruesome screams and sounds of flesh getting torn apart. By the end of it, Buzzcut was practically unresponsive. He had passed out midway through cutting a battalion of his friends with a chainsaw. Sean could not believe that his pochita broke so easily. He playfully urged Buzzcut to stay awake, as he still had a lot of questions. Chief among them was the location of Hyunho's mom. He would gladly stab a man through the cheeks to get answers. Rachel came up to him, impressed that he finished one side of the hall so quickly. Those who did not die from the barreling chainsaw ran away, so it was not as fun. Sean floated the idea of chasing after the gangsters for the sake of Hyunho's mom. Rachel was heavily opposed to that idea. She did not come here to rescue some old woman. She came because these amateur bastards tried to kidnap Sean, a property of the dead mansion. Sean himself fought like a good child and used his powers to protect her. With Sean freed and the enemies scattered, it would be logical for them to wrap up and head back to the mansion. Sean changed his tone, kneeled on one knee, and proclaimed that he did what he did not for the mansion, but for Rachel. He really hammered down that he was acting for the sake of the freaky nun. Slowly and gently wrapping a bandage around Rachel's wounds, he kept on pretending like the flawless, loyal product. With this idea, he urged Rachel to help kill and annihilate the threat that dared to wound her. With this, they could show the world what happens if they dare touch a dead mansion instructor. The unhinged sleeper agent Riz was super effective. Rachel would practically do whatever he asked right then and there. Inside, Sean was just hoping that this little performance of his would work. Rachel primed his Uzi, and Sean prepared his fist to tear some gangsters apart. Far from the hospital, Hyunho's mom opened her eyes to a horrific sight. In front of her was Byung-woo's patched-up, mummified face staring into her soul. But the maniac surprisingly acted civil and apologized for freaking her out. She naturally freaked out, and he sighed as he explained that he had to take drastic measures to explain what was really happening. Seeing the school desks and chairs, it finally clicked in her mind that they were in a classroom. It wasn't just any classroom. It was the classroom of both their kids. She was actually sitting at her son's desk. Looking down, she could not believe such cruelty. On her son's desk were hateful messages scribbled all over the surface, targeting Hyunho. Byung-woo acted as if he was appalled by the cruelty of kids, as if his son was not the main culprit. He even milked the crippled and wounded father act as much as he could. Byung-woo peeled all his bandages and formally introduced himself as Joseph's dad. He deliberately showed his freshly wounded face to blame it on that damned kid. By that, he obviously meant Park Chyeon. Staring into the windows while looking defeated, he insisted that his child was also a victim of Park Chyeon. He confessed that Chyeon put him and his son in their current dire conditions, as if they did not start the beef first. Byung-woo continued telling Hyunho's mom that Chyeon was the perpetrator of all the bullying incidents and framed his son, Joseph. Thanks to those photoshopped pictures that she saw in the principal's office, Byung-woo's story seemed more and more credible. Putting on an Oscar-worthy performance, the shrewd villain cried out for not paying better attention to his kid. Seeing him in distress while falling off his wheelchair, Hyunho's mom tried to help. While lying on the floor, he vowed to get his revenge as repentance for not being able to protect his son. He had that impassioned speech on lock, but mom was not comfortable with the idea of revenge and would rather get the law involved. Byung-woo called her naive for believing that the authorities would be able to do anything. He even pointed to the exact window where Hyunho fell while trying to convince the sweet old lady to avenge her son. In order to stop that Park Chyeon bastard, He handed Hyunho's mom a sharp blade while asserting that they must take charge. As he placed the handle of the knife in her hand, the villainous devil continued poisoning her mind with his revenge act. Back in the dead mansion, the old priest director had just received reports of what was happening in South Korea. To their organization, a group with no background, like Byungwoo Constructions, was inconsequential. That pissed the director off even more, knowing that these irrelevant thugs tried to target his masterpiece, Sean. That same night, Rachel rounded up the good children in her team to receive the mansion's orders. Even Mary and Eugene had their weapon of choice on hand, gearing up for a mission to show these nobodies the price of messing with the dead mansion. This would be Sean's first order back in the graces of the mansion, so the director wanted to see some action. The team was given the green light to pass the wrath of judgment to the puny construction company. While walking through the halls, Sean noticed that he had left his earpiece back at the desk. His teammates looked at him like an unprofessional dumbass. Sean tried to borrow an earpiece from Mary, but she told him to piss off. Even little Eugene called him out for not living up to his legendary name by acting like a stupid child. It did not take too long for Rachel to find that Byungwoo and his goons had run to the school based on nearby traffic cameras. If the devil was here, then Hyunho's mom would also be in the same place. Rachel quietly took note of Sean's fixation on that old woman. Sean was acting like a careless fool, but he had come to this place with a purpose. Rachel had to remind him that they came here to eliminate the enemy and nothing else, not for something useless. He assured her that he knew what he signed up for, but something was brewing inside the young man. If all he had to do was destroy everything in sight, it should not be too hard, right? Unbeknownst to the team, they were being tracked and filmed as soon as they sneaked into the school premises. In the control room was an armed GigaChad watching their every move. He knew that he was tracking Dead Mansion people and what that meant, but he didn't mind. All he cared about was the increase in difficulty that would require extra payment in his pocket. GigaChad's partner in crime had also heard of the mansion's child killers, but that's actually an oversimplification. Dead Mansion people are just mercenaries like them. They are just a bit younger and a lot more valuable. Byungwoo wheeled his wheelchair to the control room and promised the two mercenaries however much they wanted, as long as they could get rid of the Dead Mansion people as promised. There were supposed to be 3 mercenaries, but GigaChad's big brother was running late. Still, he was confident that this could just be a 2-man job. Byungwoo still felt a little insecure, knowing how formidable Cheyenne and his gang were. Feeling insulted by the lack of confidence, GigaChad threateningly insisted that the job would go without a hitch. Dimitri had a habit of scaring people like that. At least he was professional enough not to lay hands on annoying clients. He believed that this professionalism set them apart from those kids. Sean and the gang quietly traversed the school hall, looking for signs of activity. They had not heard a peep and had not seen a single gangster, but their tracking should be correct. Mary found it strange that none of the CCTV cameras inside the school were working, though. Eugene suggested that they split up and search to cover more ground, and they should be able to handle amateurs by themselves. Rachel liked the idea, and they split up. Mary took the security room as her side so she could work on bringing the cameras back online. Rachel reminded everyone to stay in contact with their earpieces in case a problem arose. The 3 quietly laughed at Sean for forgetting his earpiece like an amateur. Since it could not be helped, Sean was stuck following Rachel instead. Eugene chose to search in the new building. With the kids gone, Rachel and Sean were left in the hall. Being alone with the target of her weird homicidal obsession painted a twisted smile on Rachel's face. Sean started poorly, acting like a tough guy, and Rachel finally dropped the BS to ask him directly if he was still thinking of the old lady and that bullied son of hers. She wanted to know why Sean was going so far for these strangers. This misplaced obsession had no place in the mission and should be dropped. Rachel threatened that clinging to these civilians would only bring more danger their way. Before Sean, they were just regular people. In a couple of days, they had become a target for a prestigious secret association and had been kidnapped by third-rate gangsters. There was only one common denominator among all these incidents, and it was easy to see what it was. Those people would have led a normal life if Sean had not appeared. Now their lives had been permanently upended thanks to his needless meddling. He might not want to think of it in such a grisly way, but Sean could feel the weight of their lives and blood in his every step. Rachel really knew how to push Sean's buttons and make him believe that everything was his fault. She knew how his mind worked, so she also knew how to break it with just a few words. In a highly vulnerable state, Rachel reinforced the idea that the only place Sean belonged to was the Dead Mansion. Their little brainwashing session was interrupted when he sensed something coming from afar. He pushed Rachel aside, both of them dodging a hurtling bullet. The shooter was impressed at Sean's senses that detected the concealed shot. Based on Rachel's reaction to the shooter's appearance, it seemed like she knew him. As it turned out, Dmitry Medvedev was the second in command of a Russian mercenary unit called Barefoot. The last time they'd seen each other was 2 years ago on a mission in Vladivostok. Dmitry slammed the limp body of Mary he was carrying to the ground. He swore that he just smacked her around for needlessly buzzing. Rachel looked at the mercenary with poison in her gaze. Dmitri admitted that he liked Rachel, but a mission is a mission. She raised her Uzi, and he simply aimed his pistol at Mary, demanding a professional instead of an emotional approach to the situation. Dmitri proposed that he could drop this mission and let things slide once Rachel went out with him. Without pause, she cursed the womanizing dog and pulled the trigger multiple times. Dmitri swiftly threw his body to cover, dodging the initial barrage. Running under the counters, he repositioned for a better angle. He managed to return some fire but failed to hit Rachel. She paused behind cover and reloaded her dual guns at the same time. They were not expecting to run into bare foot, so things just got a lot more complicated. While stuck in an intense crossfire with the mercenary, Rachel continued lecturing Sean about how he dragged an innocent old lady into this dangerous world. Looking around, she realized that Sean had already vanished. While reloading his gun, Dmitri kept trying to riz Rachel up. It was ineffective. The mercenary reckoned that a few bullet holes in her body would be enough to knock her unconscious. Sean, who had sneaked to a wall near Dmitri, quipped that the mercenary did not have the skills to take Rachel down. The two quickly engaged in close combat, featuring a gun. 3 initial fires were thwarted by simply redirecting Dmitri's arm. Sean pushed further while keeping the gun out of the equation. With his full body weight and momentum behind a single attack, his fist and the mercenary's face met. Dmitri took the punch like a champ, though. He praised Sean for having a stronger sting than that Mary girl. Licking the blood flowing out of his nose, Dmitri found a decent opponent and was freakishly excited. You see, the Russian mercenaries of barefoot were notorious warriors. They had this cruel entrance test that filtered out the weak in the most Russian way possible. Entrants were dropped in the Siberian wilderness barefoot, and they had to come out alive after hunting something in the wild. This bloody tradition gave them their name. Those who succeeded in the inhuman trial were inducted into the barefoot. Dmitri over here hunted a whole bear for his test. Knowing this, it was no surprise that he was not affected by Sean's punch. Just as Sean was thinking back to his supposedly solid punch, Dmitri's fist landed on his face too. This attack sent him flying far away. Dmitri was used to wrestling bears to death, so a puny punch would never be enough to take him down. Just as he was about to finish the job, he finally noticed that the gun in his hand had been disassembled. The only window of opportunity Sean had was midway through taking the punch, yet he was able to remove the gun from the equation handily. Now Dmitri was seeing what the fuss about dead mansion kids was really about. Sean still had no clue how to overcome the difference in their physiques. Taking another gun out of a holster, Dmitri aimed behind Sean's cover. He had a clean shot but was forced to dodge when Rachel popped out to shoot at him. Dmitri playfully bantered with Rachel while sneaking his way to cover again. If she saw as much as the top of his head poking out, Rachel promised to put 3 new holes in it. The mercenary joked that hearing such threats made his heart flutter for some reason. This could have been an easy 2 versus 1, but Dmitri had some backup. Rachel almost got clipped by Byung-woo's gangsters, now with proper protective gear and firepower. The annoying bunch was back, and she was forced to get under cover too. Mary had also regained consciousness and was struggling to speak clearly due to her injuries. She finally managed to blurt out that there was another mercenary roaming the school. It was brief, but she managed to see the other guy through the cameras. The blue-haired punk mercenary found himself in the new school building. In there, he invited little Eugene to play a little game. Sensing danger, the kid immediately prepared to take action if needed. Blue Hair continued acting as though he was a friendly guy with a bright smile while unzipping his huge bag. Dmitri was not proud of relying on extra muscle. He would rather take the targets out by himself. Sean had recovered enough to stand upright and tell Rachel to go to Eugene, as the kid would surely be in danger against another mercenary. As for the giant bear slayer, Sean wanted to go toe-to-toe in a 1 versus 1. He wanted to return all the hits that he had taken so far. Rachel tried to talk Sean out of such a reckless idea, but the gangsters waving their guns outside made it impossible to intervene. Thankfully, the idiots were not used to firing guns, so their aim was dog water. Annoyed, Rachel returned fire and wasted every dumbass thug along the way. Those hit either died or suffered serious damage, while those who remained uninjured were too scared to fire back. Sean was dead set on taking on Dmitri solo. He was determined to prove that his legendary title was not just for show. Rachel finally conceded and carried the injured Mary out of the hall. She ran while picking off pursuers as if she were playing zombie mode. Dmitri did not like that at all. He was really into Rachel. Sean punished that little slip of attention by landing a hook to the face. Dmitri tanked the shot and primed his own fist for a counter. It was a monstrous straight that felt like it could blast a hole through a person. Thankfully, Sean reacted fast enough to dodge. Dmitri does not like being interrupted, especially when he is trying to rizz up a baddie like Sister Rachel. Sean was having a difficult time dealing with the heavy bear-killing punches. The best he could do was parry. But Dmitri was a seasoned fighter. He knew how to deal with poor defenses. He could always just use the difference in sheer force to tip the scales in his favor. Sean was able to put his guard up for the last attack, but the punch mysteriously made his arm bleed with a massive wound. The mercenary used the gun he took apart earlier and jammed the hunk of metal into his flesh. Sean insulted the big man for still using petty tricks, given his size. But all is fair in a fight to the death. He preferred the term strategy. Sean asserted that the use of such petty tricks was the exact reason Rachel would never play with Dimitri. At first, the big man was insulted, but then he was impressed by Sean's effective taunting. Still, you could see that being called out was irritating the mercenary. Sean just happened to find a sore spot in Dimitri's nerves. He really liked Rachel. He liked her enough to abandon all tricks and run up to Sean like a giant freight train, ready to tear the kid to pieces. As usual, Sean kept his eyes open and parried the first strike. And just like before, he was sent flying out of balance as the impact was too much. This time, he left 2 pens stabbed in Dimitri's arm. They were lodged deep in there, and the bleeding was quite serious. Still, this was child's play for the veteran mercenary. It only pissed him off even more. With anger came an increase in speed that Sean struggled with. While the big man chased him with fists balled up, Sean threw his jacket out to cover Dimitri's line of sight. When the big man waved the jacket away, Sean was nowhere to be found nearby. He noticed that a supposedly closed door was ajar and locked in. Dimitri licked his lips like a predator hunting his prey. Sean hid in the random office he found while lamenting his decision to take on a Russian monster on his own. He asked himself why such a beast would come to such an inconspicuous place, but he already knew the answer to that. It was because of him. Everything that had happened was because of him. Vile elements just kept flowing into this place due to his presence. Maybe he really was responsible for the ruin of normal people's normal lives. Maybe Rachel's brainwashing technique was way too much to shake off. Nevertheless, this helpless and powerless situation made Sean angry. It was not the loud kind of anger, but the more terrifyingly calm type of anger. Dimitri kicked the door open, eager to finally end this game. Sean ignored the boisterous big man as he stood up and accepted that Rachel was somewhat right. If he had not come here, there wouldn't be an elite mercenary wreaking havoc on a high school campus. Hyuno's family would have been fine too. Sean accepted that he contributed to the reason for things turning out like this, but that only fueled his desire to end this chaos with his hands too. He could not just sit, hide, and cry because it hurt. Dimitri sensed the change in the young man's aura and immediately stopped messing around. Knowing that he must end it quickly, Dimitri lunged with his combat knife. Sean calmly dodged without an ounce of wasted movement and responded in kind by breaking Dimitri's arm, literally reversing the big guy's elbow. He did not even see the hands that broke his arm with how fast it happened. With the threat of the knife neutralized, Sean used Dimitri's leg as a jumping pad. Sean scaled the giant and eventually planted his knee deep into the mercenary's nose. For once, he could be the one to call the big guy a twerp. The hit was solid and clean, but Dimitri was one tough nut to crack. He finally acknowledged Sean's name, showing respect to a formidable opponent. His nose bled, and he got another freaky taste while looking at the locked-in version of Sean. Let's rewind time to 2 years ago in the infamous Vladivostok mission, where Dimitri was commissioned to stand by outside a stronghold. Sure, he got a good rate for the mission, but he was just a glorified designated driver. It irked him even more that he was picking up little brats in the middle of the night. Hearing his complaints, Rachel corrected him for labeling the kids as brats. She preferred to call her little angels the good kids of Dead Mansion. They were perfect products. Dimitri was a lot more inexperienced and rough back then. Ignoring the driver, Rachel ordered the kids under her care to get in the vehicle one by one before the explosion. Just as young Dimitri was about to ask what this explosion business was all about, the grand stronghold behind him burst into flames. As he looked at the burning stronghold, Rachel urged him to get his ass on the driver's seat quickly. He followed suit and asked if Rachel caused the explosion. She simply answered that it was a product of the kids' hard work. She turned to the children and asked if the trip was educational. They single-mindedly confirmed. Then came the criticisms. David missed a lot of shots, most likely due to an issue with the gun. Rachel urged him to maintain his weapon in top condition. Amy's acting needed some work as she tended to mumble her words when the stakes were high. Tom was supposed to be the covert guy, but his footsteps were audible while sneaking in. As for Eddie, Rachel simply ordered him to throw the candies he took from the meeting room, as professionals should not leave any tracks that could be traced back. Hearing all these ridiculous criticisms, Dimitri laughed at how absurd it sounded. Just as he was about to light a quick cigarette, Rachel's eyes narrowed and stopped him. Breaking the cigarette, she insisted that secondhand smoke would be bad for the kids. Rachel was quite disappointed that this little brother of Barefoot's leader, Bare Knuckle, did not seem very knowledgeable about the industry. Just as he was about to protest being insulted, Dimitri was stunned at the sight of the psycho wearing a skin-tight latex nun costume while tying her hair up. From that point forward, Dimitri had been smitten by Rachel's psychotic charm. Being young and inexperienced, he tried to hide it at the time, even though his face was blushing like a ripe tomato. Changing the subject, he asked where she got her scar. Dmitri even jokingly asked if one of the kids in the back gave it to her. Running her hand through the mark, she insisted that she got the scar while training Sean, the legend of the dead mansion, Sean. Even back then, Rachel had non-stop praise for the organization's masterpiece. At a young age, Sean was branded as a genius in their field, the perfect product. At that time, they were still clueless as to where Sean ended up. In fact, they were so desperate to find him that they would gladly get any information related to the kid. One of Sean's identifying marks was the word 1 tattooed on his back. Back to the present day, seeing a glimpse of Sean's tattoo reminded the big guy of his conversation with Rachel 2 years ago. While popping his joints back into their sockets, Dmitri gave his praise to Sean's skills. As soon as the bones were back in their right places, he ripped his shirt open to have a man-to-man duel with a formidable foe. Dmitri Medvedev, also known as Grizzly, Barefoot's second in command, was ready for a real showdown. He lunged in with a knife in hand, and Sean ducked to get out of the way. The forced movement got him trapped in the big man's grip. While firmly held by the back of his neck, Sean was forced to eat a knee strike to the stomach. He gritted his teeth through the pain and did not budge. Sean bashed his head against the big man's chin, stunning Dmitri for a second. He had enough time to reset and get out of melee range. Unfortunately, the knee strike fractured a few of his ribs and caused quite a bit of injury. Assured that he was holding the upper hand, Dmitri pushed harder. A quick slash went wide, missing Sean's throat by a hair's breadth. He had hit this giant bastard in the chin at least 3 times now, but it did not even daze Dmitri one bit. His intensity and the quality of his attacks were not dropping at all. Finally, Sean was pushed with his back against the wall. Even that wall was not safe against Dmitri's freakish strength and knife skills. Still, going this long without landing a killing blow was making him a little impatient. Dmitri wanted that intense and murderous Sean from earlier to come back and face him like a man. His next stab was met with a metallic sound and a question. Did Dmitri ever receive a reward when he was young? Holding some random school plaque to defend his chest against the blade, Sean admitted that he had never been rewarded in his whole life. Pushing the hand holding the knife away, Sean kicked the big guy in the stomach with as much lower body power as he could muster. The pain made Dmitri buckle and recoil, still confused by Sean's words. Using the school plaque award, Sean made the big guy bleed from his neck with a furious stab. The force behind that steel frame must have crushed the giant's windpipe. Sean urged Dmitri to consider the plaque award as a souvenir for his trip to Korea. With another push, he drove the plaque even deeper into the mercenary's chest. This next drive nearly knocked the big guy out of the pain. With that, the man-to-man one-on-one was wrapped up. Stretching his fatigued arms, Sean wondered if he should meet up with Rachel and the rest immediately. Suddenly, he noticed something that caught his attention from his periphery. Unbeknownst to Sean, Dmitri's throat and chest might be damaged badly, but the grizzly still had enough strength to grab some golf clubs. While Sean curiously picked up the picture that caught his attention, Dmitri was winding up his swing with every bit of strength he had left. It was clumsy, hurried, but extremely destructive. It was also slow enough that Sean was able to react in time. At this point, Dmitri was just running on pure hatred. I know a real hater when I see one. Sean finally decided to ensure the win by using the giant as a literal stepping stone. He climbed onto Dmitri's back and started choking the mercenary out. Sean urged the big guy to give in unless he wanted Rachel to hate him more. Physically and mentally at his limits, Dmitri's bloodshot eyes finally closed, and his grip on the golf club loosened. Dmitri's limp body hit the floor knees first while all consciousness faded. Sean happened to find his own picture in a loose school case file. He saw a few of his pictures and a few other things. In the new school building, Eugene had just reached the swimming pool area in search of gangsters to mess up. His discreet search was interrupted by the blue-haired punk joining him to look in the pool's water. Realizing that he did not feel this man approach him at all, Eugene hurriedly jumped to a safe distance. Enemies that could hide their presence at this level are not to be looked down upon. One thing for sure was that this punk was not your average person. Eugene made the smart call and reported back to Rachel using the earpiece. The punk just laughed and confessed that he had already set up a disruptor so calls wouldn't be able to go through. Instead of dealing with pesky backups, the punk would like to play instead. Seeing as the enemy seemed like an experienced pro, Eugene's game plan was to avoid a head-on fight. He still had one ace up his sleeve, no matter how shameless it was. Deciding to use this card, Eugene started loudly crying like a normal child would while apologizing and acting cute. The punk's smile deepened while he listened to Eugene's crying and stuttering act. He asked why the kid was crying, and Eugene answered that he just wanted to go home, feeling that the punk was starting to drop his guard. But it was a massive miscalculation on Eugene's side as the punk swung his metal bat without reservation. The bat made the metallic sound of impact and sent the kid flying to the infield. Eugene tried his best to tuck his body as safely as possible to minimize damage. The arm he used to block the bat was practically useless now. He never expected the punk to attack a harmless crying kid without hesitation like that. Yuri Smirnov, Barefoot's newbie, also known as Gopnik, was a sick, twisted bastard who liked hitting the defenseless. Hearing the cries of his victims every time he hit really got this perv going. You see, Gopnik means bully in Russian. Eugene had always been a good child of the dead mansion. In his training, he learned to use his tears as a potent weapon. Using the tools at his disposal, he could complete any mission regardless of the situation. In one assignment, he had to approach a pair of guards while pretending to be in distress. The guards immediately contacted the main gate to complain about a kid getting in. Try as they might to communicate, the guys from the main gate were unresponsive and bloody. Their blood had pooled around their bodies, killed with clean slashes. While one of the guards was trying to connect to the main gate, the other was trying to pacify the crying Eugene. The little guy timidly explained that he came with his dad and got separated in the bathroom. While one of the guards checked the list for this missing parent, the other was focused on comforting the child. Children are weak, and they need the protection of adults. A child's tears could invoke protective instincts, and it was Eugene's go-to move to lower an enemy's defenses. The vigilant guard was pretty sure that none of the guests brought a kid, but when he found out, his partner was already leaning unnaturally on the ground with the kid gone. When he saw blood pouring out and pooling on the tiles, he realized that they were being played. He tried to stop his friend's bleeding while panicking. The vigilant guard surveyed the area, but Eugene was one step ahead. He was ready to pounce with his knife from the flank. Just like that, one little kid managed to clear 2 levels of security easily. Eugene immediately reported the success of the order, but his hands were stained with the blood of grown men. But the blue-haired punk in front of him was a different beast. This freak did not even hesitate to attack a crying child with a full swing. From the look of elation on his face, this creep actually enjoyed the torment. He wanted to see more of that cry, and he would gladly swing his bat a couple more times to see those fake tears again. Eugene had to think and act fast as the enemy was a swift wild card. He dodged the next attack, the bat leaving a massive crater on the floor. The power behind those swings could not be understated. It was totally different from normal. Yuri admitted that his swings were extra crispy because his bat was custom-made to his taste. With this thing, he could bash any number of children with glee. Eugene tried his best to get away and avoid any more serious damage, but the initial arm injury flared up. It knocked him out of position while Yuri was in active pursuit. Sick of being led around by the kid, the creep turned the handle of his bat and aimed at Eugene. The kid's foot, to be specific, used the weight and momentum of the bat to crush Eugene's foot. It was an acute pain that he had never felt in his short life before. Forcing himself to lock back in, the kid pulled out a butterfly knife with a flourish. He used that flimsy knife to deflect Yuri's bat. After creating a bit of separation, he tried to get up and run. Eugene vaulted over some fences and focused on retreating even though he was not in the condition to move around. Seeing him limp downstairs, Yuri decided to give the kid 10 seconds to limp as far as he could. The count started immediately, prompting Eugene to grit his teeth through the pain. One of his arms and one of his legs were compromised. It was the worst combo ever. With 8 seconds left on the timer, the kid rolled his way farther. He focused his will to run as far as he could within the given time. Try as he might to run optimally, putting weight on his injured foot shot severe pain up to his body. While he was dead set on making it out of this place, Yuri came out of hiding with his bat stretched for a full hit. Eugene clumsily pushed his body out of the way, almost getting clipped and crushed by the surprise attack. This punk did not even give him the promised full 10 seconds to retreat. Even the countdown thing was just a game Yuri liked to play to give false hope that was easy to crush. Eugene blocked the attack with his pocket knife while the creep went on about how naive the kid was. The impact eventually sent Eugene hurtling toward the swimming pool. He landed and sank to the deep end while Yuri celebrated as if he had just hit a home run. The kid's arm was too weak and in too much pain to swim back up. He wondered if he really was just a useless kid. With the negative thought rearing its ugly head, he remembered Sean making fun of him for his constant habit of self-pity earlier in the day. Eugene swore that he was not as dramatic as Sean was making it out to be. The girls had to break their fight apart as they had the annihilation mission lined up. Within hours before heading to the school, Sean promised to never make fun of Eugene again. But the kid surprisingly asked him if he was planning to save Hyunho's mom. Eugene asserted that the old woman had given up her parental rights, severing her connection with Sean. For the kid, exerting effort for someone who was not even family was weird. Eugene could still remember what that woman told him when he started questioning his upbringing. Seeing the child conflicted, Sean asked if the little guy also saw Hyunho's mom as family. Eugene had never had his hair ruffled lovingly before. But growing up to be an illegal multi-tool for the elite without receiving any love tends to mess kids up. Eugene just accepted that the old lady's definition of family was different from his. Sean's advice was for Eugene to ask the old lady what she meant the next time they saw each other. He even brought up the fact that Hyunho's mom also wanted to see Eugene over her home again. Quietly, the two good kids fostered this unlikely commonality between them. But as of now, Eugene was slowly sinking to the pool's floor while his strength was slowly sapped away. Yuri watched him sink, worried that the fun would be over so soon. Eugene finally broke through the water to inhale copious amounts of air hungrily. He flailed and cried while screaming that he did not know how to swim. Yuri held his stomach in laughter. He was just having too much fun tormenting the kid. This Gopnik extended his metal bat to give Eugene something to hold on to for safety. Eugene was a child who invoked protective instincts. Yuri, a trashy bastard who did not care about life, was a nightmare matchup. Finally, Eugene was able to reach the tip of the bat to hold on to. Just as he was about to reach safety, Yuri raised the bat playfully. With a simple whoop, he insisted that the bat slipped, and Eugene would have to just sink into the water and die. Yuri would have really saved the kid if he just held onto the bat a bit longer. At least the creep had his fun. As soon as he turned around to head elsewhere, a little hand broke through the pool's surface to pull him off balance. The first grasp did not have enough juice to do anything meaningful, but it held Yuri in place. Using the force of his whole body, Eugene flipped his grasp into the water. It was quite a struggle, but this was the only realistic way he could think of to deal with the enemy. The mantra of completing the mission kept repeating in his mind. Finally, he was able to pull Yuri, the bully, into the deep end of the pool. The kid had always been confident with his acting skills. He even managed to trick a heartless child killer. While letting the water drain Yuri of his strength, Eugene wrapped his arms around the creep's neck for a chokehold. First, he was tricked about the kid's swimming capabilities. Now, he was having trouble breathing through the chokehold. Suddenly, it was no longer fun and games for Gopnik. While tightening his choke, Eugene insulted the Russian mercenary for being such a gullible piece of crap. Amateurs like this punk are just free kills for a good child from Dead Mansion.